PlayStation acquires Audeeze.
Audeeze?
Audeeze nuts!
Ha! Got him!
Hello and welcome to the low-hanging fruit. Hello and welcome to Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. I'm your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me, as is always, is one Mr. Chris Figs. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, just absolutely wonderful. How are you?
I am doing all right. Work is still, I'm choosing not to talk about it. So, you know what, Chris? Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about all the great games we've been playing. So if you're new to the podcast, first and foremost, welcome. We hope that you stick around. Today, we're going to be talking about the PlayStation Portable, a new PSP. And we'll see about that. We're going to be talking about what you guys thought of Gamescom, getting a look back at what the community thought, some PS Plus rumors that are likely to be true, and more. But for the time being, we always start the show off in a time-honored tradition of seeing what each other have been playing so that we can hopefully give each other ideas of what's playing next, as well as maybe give you insight on some games that you may or may not like. But I always start by throwing it as a soft lob to my boy Chris. Chris, what you been playing, buddy?
I've been playing a couple things. Let's see. Sea of Stars came out last night. I was actually very surprised by Sea of Stars coming out because it came out at midnight.
Okay, yeah.
And normally when games go on Plus, they don't usually get updated. I think it's till like 3 o'clock the next day.
Sure,
so I checked and I'm like, oh shit. So yeah, I started playing Sea of Stars. That's been really good. I'm still playing a little bit of Dying Light. I don't have a ton to say about Sea of Stars. I'm still in the intro. Like, I just got through the tutorial, I believe. Well, or I'm at the end of it.
As a quick, while it's on my mind, I think a quick aside that's worth noting, who knows how real it is? Who knows how true it is? The rumor mill turns and turns and churns and churns. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. But with the fact that this is a PS Plus game that went live at midnight, I think that there's something interesting, and that might play into a rumor that came from Titus, however you want to say, a very popular leaker, has been around for some time. He said that PlayStation is working on a preload feature for PS Plus games. And it seems like the only reason that you would do that is not really for the classics or games that are getting added later, even though it could work for that. And just say, hey, the day that they hit the service, you'll be able to play them because you have them installed. I think it's more for day and date releases like Sea of Stars.
Yeah, I could see that. That would make a lot of sense. I hadn't seen that rumor, but that would be cool because it is weird sometimes where you're like, oh, I'm looking forward to the PS Plus games, and then they don't come out until 3 the next day, which is a very like first world problem of me just being like, oh, I'm interested in this game. Like Twisted Metal or Legend of Dragoon was actually the last one where I was like, I've never played Legend of Dragoon. I'm going to play it on PS Plus. So I was kind of refreshing, ready to get it downloaded, and it didn't come out till like 3 o'clock. But yeah.
Well, and then you still fight. Here's the problem with that, though. If the licenses renew and hit your account at 3 o'clock, downloading it ahead of time is helpful, but ultimately it doesn't help enough. No. But they may be changing it to where they update all that at a specific time. One thing I thought was interesting, and I don't know how true it is, so I'm going to say it off of the fact that I don't see any reason why Rude Days 93, one of our longtime listeners and patrons, would lie. He's one of our listeners that is also very Xbox heavy. You know, he listens to the podcast and plays PlayStation, but he's more of an Xbox gamer. And he said that Xbox has a feature to where you can preload games even if it's a physical purchase that you're making. So you can go to the store page and tell Xbox that, hey, I know that I've got Starfield coming on disc, but I want to go ahead and preload it, and then my disc will just be whenever I put it in, it'll be your license check. And if so, which seems completely reasonable, that's an incredible feature. And it really, I talk about, I don't use preload currently because I never basically pre-order digital games. I did it once with The Last of Us for you, and you've still not even played it. So to that end, I don't do that. I buy the game when I'm ready to download it and play it for the most part. So I don't see the benefit in preload. Plus, I can hardly ever play a game at midnight as soon as it comes out. Like that just is not the reality of my world anymore, unfortunately. So I don't worry about it. I just play it whenever I'm ready. But if you wanted to do physical for like collector's editions and stuff, that's just becomes a lot more difficult.
Yeah. I mean, I do preload a lot. It's funny because I was almost messaging you because we obviously do play games that we both buy. And because I'm planning on pre-ordering just a bunch of shit and then just not buying anything for a while. So but I like the preload because I do work at different schedules. So sometimes I get home late and I'm ready. I'm able to play it at midnight. But honestly, for me, it's just I only pre-order stuff on PSN I know I'm going to play. Like, I know I'm going to play Baldur's Gate, so I'm just going to pay for it now. And then, oh, look, something popped up that I can play, you know? So I use it because it's like, okay, I've preloaded it. It's been installed for 4 days. The minute I wake up, I can play it. Instead of the minute I wake up, I buy it. And then now I've got to wait. Baldur's Gate's 120 gigs. Now I got to wait 3 hours for it to download. So for me, the benefit of preloading is once it's available, I'm in. And we've talked about it on the show. Both of us are kind of the same way. We're like, I don't really give a shit about reviews. If I'm interested in something and I want to play it, I'll play it. We gave you, the audience, an episode on Callisto Protocol. So you know that we tend to just buy things sight unseen and just play what we want to play. So yeah. That's I think the benefit of preloading.
Yeah, to that end, I'm not going to act like I used none of the features because, like, a good example is I bought and downloaded Synapse while we were podcasting a while back. I've still not played it, unfortunately.
Sorry.
That's more because I haven't been wanting to come home from a stressful day at work and immediately jump into VR, which I do think is something VR has to contend with. Your mood has to be at a certain level, and I usually don't have that problem. I really am a very easy to separate work and home life, and I'm still doing that. Like, I don't continue to think about work whenever I'm done. It's just the stress itself, the mood changing aspects of the stress are getting to me more. And so I get home and I'm like, yeah, I'm not immediately wanting to jump into VR. And that's kind of impacting my enjoyment of VR, but that is a temporary thing. We'll see how long that lasts. Hopefully the 3 months that maternity leave takes, and then we'll go from there. But that's a different question or a different topic for a different day. So yeah, I don't really see the benefit there, but I still like the ability to be able to buy it while I'm at work when it crosses my mind, download it, and then when I get home, it's still installed. So I see the utility, though I don't necessarily interact with it. So that's fine. All right. So Armored Core 6.
Yeah, I broke on Armored Core 6. And I'm glad I broke on Armored Core 6, but that game is hard. And I came very close to getting filtered from Armored Core 6. I'm not going to lie to you.
So what do you mean filtered?
So I had this goddamn conversation with Blake. Are you guys more boomer than me? Is like being single and not a father, like, let me continue being a millennial and I like pick up on the new slang? Is that what it is?
I'm going to assume, but instead of you telling me, first of all, I'll tell you this much. No, I don't keep up with most of the new lingo. I recently was able to tell through context clues what Riz apparently means.
What does Riz mean? Now I need to know what you think it means, just to be sure.
It's basically like, do you have like, for lack of a better word at this particular moment, like, do you have je ne sais quoi? You got game, like, right? Can you spit?
Yeah.
Can you go pick up a girl or a guy or whoever? And that's because one of the younger people that works in our warehouse, I was out doing something, and we have an intern who's quite younger, and we have a new employee who's very young. And so we were messing with him and saying, like, this is your chance to get a girlfriend finally. And we were like, and so Jacob comes up and he's like, but Brennan doesn't have Riz. And I'm like, I never heard that word in my life. But in that moment, I knew exactly what it meant. So,
all right.
I've been calling him the Rizzler.
The Rizzler. Telling him,
yeah, he says that he says he can't have game because he has a touch of the tism, That's what he says.
A touch of the tism.
Yeah, and so I told him, you got to lean into it, right? You gotta have fun with it. You got to go up to girls that you have a slight interest in and be like, "How do you feel about guys on the spectrum?" I was like, that's funny, you're not saying exactly what spectrum it is, so you're leaving it up to them to figure out what spectrum you mean. I was like, that sounds fun. I think that you could probably get a few girls with that, or at least get something out of it. I was like, get it. So you can't build your Riz, if we're going to call it that, without having, you gotta try and fail. That's life, right? You gotta try and fail and try, and eventually you'll succeed to some degree. So we've been having fun there. But I'm going to assume filtered means that the game itself, in the instance that you're using it, that the game's difficulty level is naturally filtering you out of being a person who's able to play it.
Correct.
Okay.
Ding, 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 ding. Good
there we
job.
go. Context clues, man. I'm telling you, having a mother that's real into writing and being an English major and shit like that is where you have you pick up on that stuff. Context clues are a son of a bitch, aren't they?
Goddamn. But yeah, no, it's really fun. I've been having a very good time with it, but it is a very, very difficult game. It's funny because to me, it's Returnal, but harder.
From a difficulty standpoint, or just because of the way it plays?
No, the way it plays. It's a bullet hell shooting game. It's the same. It's different, but it's the same type of game. The way I've been playing it, where it's like just dodge all the bullets, shoot the boss while dodging all the bullets. That sounds like the same game to me. So Armored Core is a better Returnal.
Now, is it better simply because once you beat the boss, it's beat forever?
Maybe. I just didn't click with Returnal, really.
I clicked with Returnal up until that 3-hour run where I got to the end of the second world and was so meticulous and doing all the great things as a puppers. And then got to the point where I died and then had to go all the way back. And I thought to myself, I don't care enough. I always talk about how, like, in a game like Hades, I could die at the end of a run, but it runs 45 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour if you're really far and you're right at the end. And so dying there sucks. It does.
Yeah.
But that dopamine kick of like one more run kicks in, and then you one more run yourself into playing it till 3 a.m. I did that with Dead Cells. I would never in a million years one more run Returnal. That's the problem with Returnal is that roguelites you're supposed to continue to play, and you're supposed to get like 7 iterations in a single play session so that you learn and you get better and better and better as you have quick iteration. And then you have a game like Returnal come out, and anytime I died after the first day, I did like 3 runs in a row in the first day. Anytime I died after that, I'm like, I'm done with this game for the day, and I will play it again some other time. And that doesn't encourage you to get better, you know?
Yeah, I think for Armored Core specifically, it said it's mission based. So I did a mission today that took me 1:17. But, you know, and I did a mission, the last boss fight of Chapter 1, that took me 2 full play sessions. And the only time I beat it, it was funny because it's typical FromSoft where I was struggling for like, I would say I was on this boss for maybe 3 hours. And then I gave up, turned it off, went to bed, went to work, came back the next day, sat down, played Armored Core, and beat it on the first try. So it was very FromSoft in that way.
Yeah. You know, I didn't realize it was mission-based, though that makes total sense. But what a sentence. A mission-based game in 2023. I love it.
God, I know. It's awesome.
Like, I'm all for it.
And like you die and there's checkpoints. You don't have to play the whole goddamn mission again. It's really nice. Like, it's very hard, but the game tells you, like, you have to adapt your AC to the situation. If you keep just hitting the boss with like the basic weapons, you're gonna lose. And that was, I think, the thing I saw today. Not as much with that first boss, because I just wasn't as good, and until I got into my groove, I wasn't gonna beat it. But the boss I beat today, I realized, okay, I'm not doing enough damage with my minigun and my sword, so I switched to 2 rocket launchers, and I just smoked it. Like, it was over. You know, so that's the thing with it. And what's really cool is you can buy all your AC parts, but you can sell them back for the exact same price you bought it for. So
that's nice.
There's no,
it's like free respec.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And there's no barrier to entry for trying again. And that's, I think, the big thing I was learning with that first boss is like, I was getting filtered because I wasn't willing to try something else because I didn't want to play the whole mission over. Because that was part of the problem, is that boss is at the end of an entire mission. It's a longer mission, relative terms. So
sure,
I was like, I'm not doing that whole thing over. So I just kept doing the boss over and over again and over and over again. And then I'm on Discord, like with Blake, like, all right, this is my build. And he's sending me his build. And then, of course, I was stuck on it for an entire day longer than he was. And I'm like, this motherfucker, he started it after me, beat it before me. And I'm like, okay, good for you, you piece of shit. But it's just awesome. And then once I overcame that, obviously I'm into the next chapters and I'm doing some of the cool stuff, like doing the arena and just you fight like I guess it would be PvP, but it's against the AI. And I'm sure it just keeps getting harder as you go on. And even there, it's like respec. And one of the cool things with the difficulty is you don't even have to go back to the menu to respec your AC. Like, it's like you die and it goes restart checkpoint, restart mission, armory. And so then you can reset yourself and then go right back in just to that fight. So there were some times when I was just trying to beat that mission. And I was like, okay, I know I can get through the beginning with this, and then I'll die to the boss, and then I'll change to the boss weapons. So that was stuff you could do. But yeah, I'm really glad I broke and pick it up. But it really, now I'm starting to fear for the rest of the year, man. There's so much stuff I want to play, and I wasn't expecting to get into Armored Core.
Yeah, so it's like it's throwing off your expected trajectory for the year game-wise.
Yeah, it was supposed to be Sea of Stars, Baldur's Gate, a little red Starfield on the side, and then Alan Wake, Call of Duty. Like, that was supposed to be the year. And now there's
no Spider-Man anywhere in there.
Oh, yeah. See, I forgot about fucking Spider-Man.
Well, that's because I mean this as the positive and negative that it is. There are too many good to great games coming out this year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great problem to have, but it's still a problem, if that makes sense. Like,
it is. Well, and that's the thing is, I think
it's like you're fighting for time constantly, right?
Yeah. If you look at this year, the quality of this year, it will probably be unprecedented because, in my opinion, this is fully a result of COVID. I would be willing to bet something like Immortals of Aveum without COVID and without some of the labor things that changed for the better or for worse, depending on your perspective. That's probably a 2022, maybe late 21 game, depending on when they started working on that. But I'm sure the dev cycle, people stopped working for a while during COVID. COVID made it a lot harder while we were looking at how remote works. So I feel like the glut of punishment in a way of this year is all because of COVID. Like, Spider-Man would have been out. I would be willing to bet Spider-Man was out last year without COVID. That was definitely
hard to say, though. It's really hard to say with Insomniac's actual release schedule, though.
Sure,
like they are already 3 exclusives deep into a system that most of PlayStation's actual studios haven't put a single game on.
Well, you have to wonder if you look at just PlayStation's lineup, right? Early COVID, God of War Ragnarok is a 2021. Is a launch title, right? It was a launch. It was a 21, right? So then, if you think about the lineup,
yeah, it was 21.
Yeah,
or actually, sorry, Ragnarok was last year, so 22.
No, but they announced for 21, right? On PS4.
Yes,
yeah.
They did.
So if you think about the trajectory of that, Spider-Man, you could probably push that at least a year back, maybe 2, right? Just thinking, okay, if their plan was God of War Spider-Man or God of War Horizon Spider-Man, flip that however which way, I can't remember off the top of my head. You have to think that everything that we were supposed to get at the beginning of the PS5 and the Xbox generation was pushed 2 to 3 years along with the rest of the industry. So 2023 is us catching up on what we would have had. And now we're going to be looking forward to stuff that we'd already be talking about, right? Like, you almost wonder, would we have seen Fair Games gameplay at this point? Would Fair Games exist because would Haven be working on this cloud technology if we weren't trying to solve work from home solutions? It's really interesting thought exercise of,
I think COVID's impact on all industries is something that won't really be understood until 10 years out, where someone can go back and do a deep dive and look at how things changed, what was for the better, what was for the worse, and all those things. For all the stuff I don't love about Jason Schreier and his weak constitution, this seems like the perfect thing for Jason Schreier to write a book about in 8 years.
Oh, I'd love it, because it's almost to a very
because he writes, he's a well-written person when it comes, like both of his
first
books
book is great. I haven't read a second one yet.
Yeah.
But it's almost akin to like the Dark Ages, right? Where if you believe the history, right, we didn't advance for like 500 years, right? Nothing came out of that time. And it's almost like games in a very small microcosm is like everything got pushed back so long that we didn't advance. And you almost wonder if even the console cycle might last a little longer because, Fair Games wasn't ready and Concord wasn't ready and Elder Scrolls is even farther away because you got to think like people are like, PlayStation's been really quiet. They haven't had shit to say. Without COVID, I'm sure, me and you were talking about what Fair Games looks like already. And Concord's almost here. And we're hearing Ghost of Tsushima 2 leaks and The Last of Us 3 because all of this stuff was delayed. And it's interesting just thinking about where time went. That's
true. And there's a lot of conversations I've been waiting within this as they've been popping into my mind. There's a couple things I want to break, but while we're on the topic of COVID, and then I want to go back to Armored Core 6, and it's all kind of a similar point though. So really I'll tell you both of them, and we can kind of have a conversation around what we're talking about. So the first thing in more serious relation to COVID is that I think COVID delaying so many games into a year where you have a year like this of so many big games. I think games like Forspoken and Avium and a lot of these games that are landing more in the low 70s, high 60s, maybe even high 70s are games that might have fared considerably better in a year that wasn't stacked with so many high quality, beloved games. And now I'm not saying that Forspoken suddenly becomes a 9 or a 10 out of 10, but maybe Forspoken is like a 72 in a different context. Maybe Avium is like an 81 in a different context, and like it's funny because going through it, like I enjoyed Forspoken, but I also definitely, as I got to the end of the game, I started seeing some of the things that, thinking about it as all right, if I'm being critical of this game, what is the problem? Okay, if this game has a lot of problems with pacing at the end, it suddenly is just moving through things too quickly and not resolving things in an interesting enough way, and it just has to get to an end. And this seems like a game that got delayed and had to get rushed out of the door, so it didn't get delayed anymore. All right, so you have that. But when I'm playing Avium right now, it's like I don't understand the scores, but I also don't understand because, like, I read a lot of the reviews and watched some reviews from people, and everything about the review, I'm like, I don't see how the review matches the score. It seems like the review strictly comes down to, well, I should say, it doesn't match the score in a vacuum. Like when I'm reading the review and I'm looking, I'm like, no. But then I think, okay, in a year with Zelda and a year with Resident Evil 4 remake and Dead Space remake and all these big high, Baldur's Gate 3, and we're looking at all these different things and games pushing the genres forward or the industry forward and making big changes. And then you look at a game like Avium and I'm like, yeah, Avium's a lot safer of a bet in many ways. And so is that being looked at in a weird way in partial context of that? Because I don't see anything inherently wrong with Avium. Now, that doesn't mean it deserves to be a 10 out of 10, but there's nothing that I'm seeing that justifies. It's like a 71 right now. And so it's that context where you're like, it's got to just be because of how much other stuff it's batting against right now. And this is honestly, I think it may have even fared better if it released when it was originally supposed to.
Yeah. Well,
like it's crazy how right now a month can completely change the outlook of the games industry because something can land in a single month and make people go, now this is what gaming can be. Like people are talking, Avium comes out right when people are hyped on Starfield and how big it is and all these things. And then you have a game that's the antithesis of that.
Well, I mean, even just to that point, If Fallout 4 releases before The Witcher 3, Fallout 4 gets 10s.
100%. And you know what's funny is like I know you love Fallout 4, but I have long said Fallout 4 got hit from a review standpoint, and even to some degree from a fan expectation standpoint, though it still clearly sold many millions of copies.
Say that but five times fast.
Yeah, I think that game very much was hit by the expectation change that came off the back of The Witcher. Yeah. And now that you've played The Witcher, I think that you can kind of put yourself in the perspective of someone who played The Witcher and then later that year played Fallout 4. And even if you think they're both great, I think you can see how one does impact your view of the other. Regardless of whether you think they're both good, you come off of one and you're looking going, wow, yeah, this is different.
I think the problem with that for me, and I'll tell you right now, The Witcher 3 is heads and shoulders better than Fallout 4.
Yeah, I agree.
Imagine me saying that 2 years ago.
I wasn't going to say that.
Head and shoulders above Fallout 4. But it's in the same genre, but it's a completely different game.
100%.
Fallout 4 is not open world in the same way Ghost Recon Wildlands is open world, right? So The Witcher 3 and Fallout 4 are not open world in the same way.
You're right.
And the ironic thing about it is Witcher 3 is the better game, but Fallout 4 has the more immersive world. In my opinion, but you feel, look, this is me and I haven't played Fallout 4 since I got the platinum when it came out.
Yeah.
But I remember, and the way I feel about all Bethesda games is when you walk, anytime you're walking, something can happen. And for me, when I played The Witcher 3, and again, love the game, it's fantastic. When you go through that world, for the most part, it felt like I'm going through this world because I need to get to the next quest marker. And you were never going to get like, oh no, I've just passed this building and there's a super mutant fight here. And now I'm in the middle of combat and I can't do anything. I just played The Witcher. That does not happen. Unless it's about to give you another quest.
I think it's just, you're right. It's the way the game chooses to frame all of its content. Like you'll get stuff like that, but it's all going to be looked at like, okay, well, this is a hunt. This is something you're supposed to do. Whereas regardless of whether you're supposed to find it or not, Bethesda games do a really good job at making you believe that you might be the only person that's ever walked up and this was happening right here. And whether or not that's true, it's just how those games are presented. Because like, I remember the first time that I was going in Skyrim outside of Whiterun when you're on the way to it, and then there's that fight with the giant, and I got fucking mollywopped by the giant into the sky, and I thought that's amazing. Yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I can't wait to tell my buddy later because that's like a crazy, no one else is going to have that experience. And he's like, dude, I was on the way to Whiterun and I got into a fight with a giant, and I was like, that kind of fucking blows because I thought that I just stumbled across something amazing. Yeah. And the game never made you feel like it was a scripted event, but in many ways it very much was.
And I think that one is definitely, there's a location marker for that giant thing, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it's not. It's just something you can do. But there are two NPCs that you can have an optional conversation with and they'll talk about it.
Gotcha.
You can completely ignore them and go to Whiterun.
I think I should probably change the word I use, where Fallout 4 is more immersive.
I get what you mean. I would even say Fallout 4 is more emergent is the word I would actually use.
And that's Fallout 4 is
a good example is I think Red Dead 2 is far more Witcher 3 than it is Fallout 4.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the best. So as a recent touchstone that maybe a different audience has played who haven't played any of the other two games. Like if you're going to go back and play either The Witcher 3 or Fallout 4 and you've played Red Dead 2, don't expect very much cross and overlay of the way that these games play and what to expect in Fallout 4. But there's a lot of aspects of The Witcher 3 present in Red Dead 2.
Yeah. Fallout 4, it's like we had a conversation on the show where I said that like Witcher 3, I'm playing Geralt, and in Fallout 4, I'm playing me. And I think that's why the games work in different ways, where Witcher 3 is a really great and immersive telling of Geralt's story. Fallout 4 is a really good immersive telling of my story in the wastes. So I think that changes it. But the whole point that I was trying to make, right, is that I think that quality and the way that the bar has been raised for almost kind of what I said last week, where the bar has been raised to a point where every game that comes out, everyone expects to be their next top 5 game of all time. And we didn't have that in the PS3 generation, right? Because Immortals of Aveum coming out on the PS3 generation gets tense the same way that Fallout does.
So we're skirting around it, and I purposely up until this moment chose not to say this, but this was the other conversation I was going to have. And that is there will always be an exception to a rule.
Mm-hmm.
And by no means by the sentence am I about to say am I comparing the two things and saying they are the same or that the developers are of the same pedigree or any of that. But as much as we are talking about Avium's reviews reading as though the biggest reason its review score is low is just because it's not expansive enough or pushing the games industry forward enough. It's not open enough. It's not long and sprawling. Instead, it's focused on being a 12 to 15 hour linear game that has some action aspects to it, and then you're just done with it. And that's what most of the reviews are like, is it's like I had a good time, but the game is not long enough, and I would have wanted to see more, and I want this expansion and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, but what I'm getting, this is exactly what I want. This is pretty high quality for a very focused set of things. And it's just clearly a different expectation of want. And maybe if you think review scores are supposed to specifically go towards talking about how the game fares within the industry at the time of the review, then maybe its reviews are fair. But I don't know that I use review scores that way. I think review scores are a little more objective and kind of looking at it. We have a question here that I want to get to in a minute. But the thing that I was going to say is, in spite of all of what I just said about Aveum and why it's getting knocks against it, then you have From Software, who are a developer who are basically known for just doing what they want to such a degree that they can make something that is a counter thesis to anything happening in the industry at the moment and be given top marks for it. And I say that because Chris is talking about Armored Core 6, a game that visually looks great, but it also kind of just looks like a PS4 game. Not in a way that I mean derogatorily, but it's like it's not pushing the bar graphically, which is fine. I don't think any From game really truly has. It's instead you appreciate the art. And it's choosing to eschew modern game design entirely. It's going mission-based. It's hard as shit and chooses not to really have much in the way of accessibility options. Instead, it's just like you can either play the game or you can't. And
and it's actually
they're being and they're getting glowing reviews and being raised up and exalted as a result of it. So I only say that because it is weird that in one hand we're talking about Aveum, a game that I think in a different time and a different place fares a lot better, versus a game that feels decidedly like a PS3 game in terms of structure and design and all these different things. And that is because Armored Core 6 is a great game, but I also think it's because, as much as I love From Software and think they've earned this, you are dealing with the fact that From Software have proven themselves so many times. It's like no one questions them anymore. I
certainly don't.
You don't question the integrity, really. You play their game and you're like, okay, yeah, they made a great game and they deserve the acclaim they're getting. And I am certain that Armored Core 6 is probably a better game than Aveum. I haven't played it, so I say probably because I don't have the information.
I've played a little of both. It's definitely
they're also two very different games, like you were talking about with Fallout and The Witcher. Even though Fallout and The Witcher have far more. Actually, I don't know. Avium's a shooter game. Maybe.
I think those two games do have as much in common.
That might be fair. So anyway, that's just a weird conversation to have around the expectations of the industry. And then I think sometimes we as podcasters, but also just we as fans more than anything, I think sometimes because we're so thinking about the games we're having a good time and enjoying and playing, that we're over exaggerating the aspects of certain things. So like Aveum, I know for a fact, is really not that big of a topic of discussion because it's being overshadowed by a year of quite literally just giants. I mean, it's up against so much. It's up against so many known franchises that it's really hard for it to fight. But Chris, do you have anything to say on that real quick? And then we have a question that kind of plays into this conversation that I think is a good time to go ahead and do.
No, go for the question.
All right. So it's Jehudi MD, one of our long time listeners, long time patrons. And he asked, do you have a game of each genre / type that you put on a pedestal to compare other games of same genre and type to? Or do you look at each game individually and assess it on its own merits? And I think that's right up around what we're talking about with something like The Witcher and Fallout and all these games that you kind of, how games are looked at in comparison to other games and how that may impact somebody. So we see that on the industry scale of like games journalism, how that may impact them. But on more of a, independent level for me and you, where do you land on that? Do you kind of have the RPG that you pit all RPGs against?
I don't have anything like this, honestly. Because for me, a game's either very much hit or games either very much don't. And
sure.
I would have told you that I was a WRPG guy, but I don't think I'm there anymore. And if you had asked me during when I was playing Persona 5, I would have told you that I love JRPGs, and I've never played another JRPG past the first hour, right? Right now, I love mech games. I've never played another mech game. I've never played another Armored Core game. So for me, it's just if the game is good. Kind of like Crusaders King. I rarely talk about Crusader Kings on this show, but every once in a while I throw that game on, and it's like 18 hours of my week is playing Crusader Kings, and I don't know how to play Crusaders Kings, which says a lot about how much fun the game is. And making your family marry off and have psychopathic incest babies is fun. But so I don't put really any genres on a pedestal. I think if you asked me today, I would say that third person games are kind of what I look for the most. I think that's what I connect with the most. But
so if we're looking at that, right, if you're talking about connecting with that, so is there a single game that you kind of pit other games within that same style against and go, was it as good as, like, okay, we'll say we'll just use like Sony games for an example, right? You're going through Sony's games, you're thinking of all their third person games. You're like, Uncharted 4 is the cream of the crop, and I look at every game and think, is this as good, if not, whatever as Uncharted 4? And then you kind of go from there. And I mean that's a bold choice.
I guess
I do like Uncharted 4, but
I feel like at that point, then the most interesting question is, which game do you hold at the top of each respective genre?
And that's really what he's saying is like, do you have a game you hold at the top of the genre, and do you utilize it specifically to compare other games to, so that you can kind of gauge how you feel about it?
I was reading the question as like, do you have a genre that steps over? But at that point, I think for shooters,
a game of each genre that you put on a pedestal to compare other games of the same genre to.
Okay, so then let's start with FPS, right? For me, it would be Apex. I always compare how those feel. How about you, FPS?
It's the most unpopular answer ever, and I get told this constantly. It's Killzone. It's Killzone.
I like how those games feel, but I don't want to play Call of Duty like that.
I adore. But here's the thing. I am willing to say that there is a completely reasonable chance that if that became the prevalent feel of shooter games, that I might get tired of it.
Yeah, it works.
I don't know. But all I'll say is that is my go-to. I think Killzone feels amazing, and I love that way. And most of the times when I have problems with shooters, it is like I feel like I don't have enough presence and weight within the game and how I'm playing it.
Mhm.
But I will also say that the other game that comes to mind as the absolute pinnacle, and it is the exact opposite. Unreal Tournament 3 feels fucking incredible. And it is so fast. And it is so responsive. And I adored that game. I played hundreds of hours of that game online and got very good. And Killzone and it are just diametrically opposed styles.
Fair
so
enough.
it's almost like a subgenre.
Yeah.
Because the arena shooter is way different.
Yeah, I would probably have a different rating for an arena shooter. It would probably be Doom. Third-person
Doom's
shooter.
a good answer. Yeah. Third-person shooter. Oh, that's a good question. Are you ready? It's gonna blow someone's mind.
I'm gonna bet it's gonna be. We're gonna have the same answer.
Is it Days Gone?
No, actually, now I might actually blow someone's mind. Days Gone's a great answer.
Days Gone's a really good. Though, I mean, do you consider that to be a third-person shooter, or do you think it's the fact that game's kind of open world? Do you think it pushes too broad?
I think it's an open world third-person shooter, so I would give it to you.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The Last of Us.
So what's
2.
yours? Oh, dude, The Last of Us 2 is a close second.
The Last of Us 2.
The Last of Us 2 feels. You know what's funny? Do you notice how the thing that we're talking about on each of these is how it feels?
Exactly. That's what
I feel like that's about to shift when you change genres, though, if I'm being honest.
All right.
Well, okay, look, within their own genres, third-person shooter.
Yeah.
Do you think feel is the most important aspect?
I think feel is the most important aspect of any game.
I think that you might eat those words when we start talking about RPGs, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
Fallout 3 is one of the best RPGs ever, and I will say that right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so is New Vegas. I think I like New Vegas more. Both of those games feel like absolute ass to play. They are terrible.
I don't agree with you.
I think that those games feel like shit.
I love the way Fallout 3 plays.
Morrowind is one of my favorite RPGs of all time. It has one of the most interesting worlds, and it forces you to interact with the world. I said this on Discord today. It forces you to interact with the world to learn anything. You have to. The game doesn't tell you shit. They're like, well, this guy's in this cave, and you got to go fucking run around and figure out where that cave's at.
Yeah.
You are not going to get a quest marker or anything. And I love that game. That game has one of the worst combat systems I've ever experienced in a game. It feels terrible. It feels great when you're just running around. The moment that you have to interact with something in a combative nature, ugh. Have you played Morrowind?
I have it on Xbox. I have not played it.
Talking about
For the record,
feel.
I bought an Xbox after I bought Jet Set on the show, and I have never told anyone, but I have an Xbox with like 5 games. I just bought Xenosaga. I didn't do it on purpose. So Xenosaga is in the collection. That'll come through. And it was because I put a bid in and forgot. And then 5 months later, or 5 days later, I got a notification. It was like, you won. Congrats on getting Xenosaga. Got it for $20, so it's great. But
Man, that's not a bad price at all.
no,
But it's funny. You talk about feel. This is both third-person versions of games you don't have to play in third person. Well, actually, Fable you do. Fable 2. One of my biggest complaints for both Fable 2 and Oblivion is that when you, in third person in Oblivion, and this is true of Fallout 3 and New Vegas, it feels like dog shit and it looks terrible. You're just like slipping over the ground while you're running. It's like your guy's just like disconnected from the world. He's like spinning around and it's awful.
I'm going to be real with
it.
you. I think we're going to have a very specific conversation when we get to a different genre.
Clearly, we're about to. So we're out of third-person shooters. We know where we are. The Last of Us 2 is a very strong second for me. That game is, in many ways, it's as good as Days Gone in terms of feel. The reason that Days Gone goes up a little bit higher for me is that the open world aspect of Days Gone actually does add something to the freedom of choosing how to handle a fight. And my go-to example for a game like Days Gone, and why I wish that Horizon would have kept a lot of what I think Horizon 1 had going for it with your traps and whatnot that you could set up, tripwires and stuff like that. They're there, but they're severely toned back, is that it's fun being able to run around and just scan your environment and be like, here's a stack of logs that I can put a bomb on, and that will roll these people over here, which will divert them around to here, and I can have this set up here, and you freely place all of that. And I think that game's broadness to how you can solve any given problem is what makes it so good. But The Last of Us 2 actually feels better to play. The Last of Us 2 is hands down the most satisfying to play in the moment. Just straight hand feel of combat. It's so good.
So I'm going to shift it a little bit. Okay. And I'm just going to ask you, what do you hold up as the best example of an open world?
Oh, man.
Because I think that's a different conversation than open world RPG.
Yeah. My gut answer is strong.
Okay.
And I don't think people are going to like it. So part of me doesn't want to say it.
Say it.
Okay. I'm torn between, and I say this because as I just talked about of it, I think it's the best aspect of the game, but I'm torn between Shadow of the Colossus.
Okay.
And I know that you've not played the game, but it is the antithesis of what most people talk about with an open world. It is empty and dead. All on purpose. It is the point of the game. It's environmental storytelling. It's setting set pieces with the monsters being the only things you're fighting in these dead lands. But I think the open world feels like every part of the world has so much purpose because every section of the world can be freely explored, and there are things to find and ways to improve your character and all these different things. And they're basically all just giant arenas for you to fight within. And it's like, I just feel like that design works really well. The other that I go towards is specifically Morrowind. And I know that sounds like I may be talking about an RPG, but I actually think that game feels humongous because of the way it forces you to play it. And it all comes down to smart design. That game is not very big. It doesn't have a huge map at all. But fast traveling is specifically relegated to these things called silt striders, which are giant fleas, basically, that you get on the back of and ride between. And you really can't travel anywhere, if I recall correctly, until you found it and get on a silt strider and then can go to each place. And I think it has the most interesting world, even though it's segmented off. It's got a very interesting design. It's unique. And it forces you to interact with it in a weird way. What are your two? Or what is your one, if you want to go with one? I don't know which one of those two I want to crown. They're both great answers for vastly different reasons. I'd probably say Morrowind if I had to choose one.
So for me, it's how the open world feels to live in. So I have two answers for you.
They're both Rockstar games?
No.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
One is a Rockstar game, and that is Red Dead Redemption 2. It has one of the greatest open worlds of all time. Number two is Sleeping Dogs, which also has one of the greatest open worlds of all time.
I've not played that, but I know a lot of people who love and just very, very much are super endeared toward that game.
Sleeping Dogs is fantastic. I think it plays like shit on PS5, so I don't even know how I would recommend you play it. But so it's funny, when the PS5 came out, I was working on the Platinum on PS4, and I was close. I had most of the collectibles. I was halfway through the game, and it ran so bad on PS5 that I've never played it again.
Do you think maybe they fixed it by now?
No, I've tried. It runs like crap.
So
it runs at like 15 FPS. It's impossible to play.
What about that game's open world that makes it so good to you?
It's
and
interesting.
I say that because I haven't played it at all, right?
It's just
so like
interesting.
We both know Red Dead 2.
Yeah, we do.
And I want to talk about it in a second. But what is it about Sleeping Dogs? You say it's interesting. I mean, in what is it just?
Well, it's a setting we don't see.
You feel like there's a mystery around every corner, something that you want to see around.
Every Rockstar game is New York, or it's the USA. Most games are fake fantasy land somewhere in America.
Okay.
Right? For the most part, that's the case. And I think what makes Sleeping Dogs so interesting is it's set in Japan.
Okay.
And so it's a different environment. The driving's different. You know,
it's probably why people like Shinmu so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So those are the two I would say.
Okay. So Red Dead. And I think it's a great answer, and I even understand it. But I'll tell you the thing that takes points away from it for me, and why a game like Shadow of the Colossus gets points. And this is going to sound potentially crazy to some people, but I at least firmly believe it within my heart. I loved Red Dead 2's world for about 20 hours, and I mean adored for about 20 hours. Then it came down to it's great for what the game is and what you're doing within this world, but it starts to lose points, and we talked about this a little recently. The moment that random events started happening more than once, and it started being a thing where it's like throughout the time of the game, like I always mention, a prisoner came off the side of the road and asked me to free his cuffs like 12 times.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I was like, this is awesome. And it felt so random, kind of like I was talking about with the Skyrim giant thing. And then the moment it happened again, it was kind of like glass shatter. And I was like, oh no. And then it just kept happening. I was like, well, everything that was special about that interaction that was supposed to make the world feel more alive made this feel like so much more of a game. Conversely, Shadow of the Colossus and how empty its world is, you can't run into the same thing again and again because the world doesn't try to convince you that it's real. And somehow it feels more real because in the real world, the same thing doesn't really happen to you twice in that way. The problem with a lot of open worlds is that they try and come up with something interesting, but not too crazy that kind of makes you feel like, ooh, that was a thing of note that can make it feel like this is an interesting world that I'm in. But I actually think most games fare better if they just like, yeah, you're in the world and you just exist in it. And we're not going to have scripted events that are supposed to feel like non-scripted events, because eventually you'll experience them again and it ruins the magic. So, all right. So let's do one more genre and then we'll move on. Even though
about to say the same thing.
So what genre do you think's left?
Let's go with RPG.
Okay. So what's best RPG? Oh, that's a broad damn question.
I think my answer is going to be pretty funny. And that's because I have 3 answers, and 2 of them we've already talked about. So my answers would be Baldur's Gate 3, Fallout 4, and The Witcher 3.
The Witcher 3 is up there. It's probably actually my answer. It's such a great game. But a big part of me wants to shout out Fable 1. Something about Fable 1 just really understands how to ride that balance between being an RPG and letting me do the things I want to do while feeling natural and like I'm progressing through them, while also not being so open-ended that it becomes paralyzing. And that may not be a bad thing. It's just, I'm a little worried about that with Baldur's Gate 3.
Don't be. We'll be fine.
It's what it feels like, even though I don't think that's actually the problem, because we talked about there is an end. It's something that's been programmed. But something about Fable, even to this day, about being able to play that game and have your actions subtly, slowly over time change your character in one direction or the other, feels like the epitome of role-playing. And I know that seems so dated by a lot of people's things now, but I think the difference is that it was based off of every action that you took and not like the Mass Effect infamous hyper scope down version of it where it's like, we're just going to make you make a decision that is clearly coded in a color that lets you know it's good or bad. Instead, you just got more evil if you went around people and like burping and farting and like killing people. It was more like your interactions in the world instead of your interactions within a posed question impact your feeling. And that feels like an RPG to me. Kind of like you're talking about with Fallout 4 when you run across a group of things and you're like, the game is not telling me that this is one more thing on my list that I'm supposed to do. This is something I can choose to do and interact with, and that makes it feel more emergent. And being able to run up on a person in Fable and just be like, this person seems cool. I'm gonna like laugh and make jokes with them. Or this person is kind of annoying me. I'm gonna fart and laugh and point at them. It seems dumb, but it's very fun. I like that game a lot. So, all right. Well, there you go, Jehudi. Hopefully that gives you some kind of answer. But you know what? Let's go ahead. We have gone so far past. We have a quick communities take, so let's jump into it. the community's take, if you're new to the show, is where we ask you guys at the end of the episode something from within the episode or just something that's on our minds that's in relation to gaming, so that you guys can give us feedback. You can push back on some of our opinions that you may not have agreed with. You can offer us a different view of perspective, or you can tell us if you agreed with us, and if so, why. And the one last week was very simple. What'd you think of Gamescom's opening night live? So ONL, as some people called it, showcase. Any highlights, any low points? I have 4 answers. We got more, but I didn't just want to let the whole thing be negativity towards opening night live. So apparently people who listen to us didn't really think it was all that great. So there's that. For our patrons who go over to patreon.com/Nartech and give as little as $1 per month, we always give them preferred reading where possible, but we like to also throw in ones that are not. These are all patron answers. The first one comes from Jehudi MD, who we talked about just a minute ago. He says, didn't really have any interest in watching Gamescom. Never had, actually. Not to be on the negative side of things, but were there ever any big announcements that have happened in the past to make Gamescom really feel worth watching or keeping an eye on? I don't think there has been. Back when they used to do Paris Games Week, there was a few big announcements that happened there, like Detroit Become Human, if I remember, was announced there. And I think Ghost of Tsushima was announced there one year as well. I don't think there's ever been an actual Gamescom opening night live scoop. But
yeah, even this one was mostly like, hey, here's more gameplay of stuff you've seen before. Though, I don't know if we talked about it last week. I watched more Crimson Desert, and phenomenal looking game. Can't wait.
Are you talking about the MMO?
No, it's a single player open world RPG.
Oh, you're right, but it's from the MMO people.
Yeah, it's from them. Made Black Desert.
Yeah, it's from Black Desert. Yeah, but that game does look cool. Yeah, I forgot, but they also showed Black Desert off, didn't they? During that, did they show?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
I can't remember. I think the naming is what gets me. Crimson Desert and Black Desert are so similar. Josh Ayers, another patron, he says, I wasn't a fan. Glad I didn't watch live and was able to skip through it. Short, simple, to the point. We have Velvet Thunder as our last of the more negatively tinged ones. He says, mostly a snooze fest, but Keighley set appropriate expectations beforehand, so I can't be mad. The Sonic Frontiers DLC teaser and Little Nightmares 3 were highlights for sure. Low point was Zack Snyder making me want to rip my own face off in embarrassment. I feel like you have grievances with Zack Snyder. I don't think it was that bad. It definitely felt odd, and you could tell in the moment, but
yeah,
there you have it. I think if they would have actually had something to show for the game, it would have felt more purposeful than it actually did, but that's okay. And the last one we have here that's a little bit more on the positive side is from a One-Armed Wolf, another one of our patrons. He says, hands down, the best thing shown was Rebel Moon. So it's the exact opposite of Velvet. He says, in all seriousness, though, my top highlight would be Black Myth Wukong. Please be like Sekiro. After that would be Crimson Desert. Nightingale and the 2.0 Phantom Liberty update has me wanting to go back to Cyberpunk and give it a chance again. So yeah, a lot of the games that Chris and I kind of pointed out, I think Nightingale looks really good. It's like surprisingly good. And I know we've seen it before, but this is the first time where I'm really feeling like, okay, I might really like that. Crimson Desert is an interesting idea. Hopefully it's very good. And Black Myth, and of course, Cyberpunk are great releases there. So,
hell yeah.
Chris, are you going to go back and play Cyberpunk normally again, or are you going to just try and hop directly into Phantom Liberty?
No, I'm probably going to go for the Platinum on PS5.
My guy. There you go.
Yeah. No auto pop on this one.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, man. Yeah. So many games I want to play, dude. Fuck me.
It's a rough times. Yeah, I'm aware. Trust me. I'm wanting to replay Sonic Frontiers somewhere in all of this. And as it leaves my mouth and as I've been thinking about it, I feel stupid for saying that because I have so much I've not played.
I still haven't finished my Resident Evil 4 Platinum. I got some things to do.
Are you ready for the other? The only upside to it is it's such an easy game to get through that it wouldn't even matter. But there's another game I want to replay yet again in the middle of all this shit going on. I have been wanting to play The Order so goddamn bad lately.
Well, you might as well take 10 minutes out of your day and finish the game.
Every part of me is like, I should not do it when I've not even played like half of the big games from this year. And then the other part of me is like, yeah, it's like a good 12, 10 hours, whatever. Like, I know what I'm doing, so probably 8.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's funny because we're talking about that. You know what I really want to get in this year is I want to finish Alan Wake and play Control.
Alan Wake's not that long. That's actually a good example of a game you should be able to get in and out of. It's like 15 hours max.
Yeah,
right.
That one I'm more concerned about Control because I've never played Control. I've beaten Alan
Control's
Wake before.
Like 25 to 30, and if you're going for platinum, maybe a little longer.
And I got to do the DLC because that connects directly into Alan Wake 2.
Yeah, I can't tell you about the DLC. But all right, guys, that was the community's take. If you want to be part of the next one, remember you can find us on the social media site formerly known as Twitter at Triangle SQRD. We're on Facebook in a group called Triangle Square to PlayStation Podcast. And you can click down in the description below whether you're watching on video. And I know that is not actually been true for a couple of weeks. I'm working on it, I promise. Or you're listening on podcast services, then you can click down and get into the Discord and talk to us in our day-to-day lives, where a lot of our users have done that, and we love to hear from them. On the video side of things, I cannot figure. We've been having a lot of issues with Zencastr, which is what we use, and it seems to be partially corrupting the video files. So we're able to get an audio version out, but I have been having so many problems with the video. So I apologize for those of you who prefer to watch. We have not been able to deliver that. If you like to watch the show, please voice up, let us know. I do keep doing it because we've been doing it for 300 episodes. You kind of feel like, why not? But I would like to know that those efforts are at least something that's very much wanted. So we'd love to hear from you. If you like what we're doing here and you are watching, consider subscribing so you can keep up with them. But Chris, I think it's time to go into the news. What say you?
Let's do it.
First one here is juicy. There's going to be a lot of talk around this. Project Q. It's finally come around. It has been named and its price revealed. PlayStation Portal, not Portable, Portal, will be released later this year. Still no date, though, and will cost $199.99. Portal is a remote play device and will obviously require a connected console to work. The device will neither support Bluetooth nor PSVR 2, as you should expect, or cloud-streamed video games. Notably, PS Portal uses a proprietary connection called PS Link, which is being billed as something that will make latency better. So your current Bluetooth headset will not work with the device. It will require devices that have Link compatibility if you want to go wireless. There is, of course, a headphone jack for if you want to have a wired headset. Just to note that. There's a lot going on around here. So I think let's go ahead and introduce the questions that are around it because they're going to play into the conversation we're going to have. We have two questions. And they're opposite ends of the spectrum. So first thing is Josh Ayers. He asked, the PS Portal seems like a neat idea. Are you guys picking it up? Chris?
The real answer is yes, because I tend to just do that. But yeah, I think so, because I think it'll be good for, especially when Baldur's Gate comes out, where I'm like, hey, I'm going to throw on a movie and play Baldur's Gate on the PS Portal, or I'm going to go upstairs and play Baldur's Gate. There's that. I do like that aspect of it. So I'll probably end up picking it up and then justifying it in my head and then never using it. So
your choicing of word there may giving hints to a bigger point of the conversation. My answer is almost undoubtedly no. And there's a big reason why that I'll get to into a minute. But yeah, I think the reality is I'd never remote play now. And I don't think that's going to change just because of that. I don't really have enough time. I already struggle to make time to game. And being able to do it on the go is not really going to change that in any considerable fashion, or even being able to turn it on while TV's there. Usually if we're watching TV in the game room, it's because I just feel like decompressing and watching TV. So that's not changing much for me. But then we have a flip side. And we can get a little bit more into our feelings about all of it, positive or negative. From No Fate, another one of our patrons' questions, he says, who's in charge of Sony's handheld department? Because why do they keep fucking up key features? So he lists them. He says PSP, the original portable, 1 analog stick. PS Vita, no L2 and R2. PS Portal, where do I begin? Facepalm. All that said, what's the chance Sony heard all of our PS Portal expectations and are thinking about a pro version? First and foremost, on the chances of that, of a pro version of the Portal specifically, no doubt. They're not doing it. There's zero reason for them to do that. You have a still very low chance, but a much higher chance if you say, what are the chances Sony is looking at and paying attention to the buzz that the Portal does generate and listening to feedback from people who seem like potential real customers and are debating once more whether or not an actual dedicated handheld for those players might be worth the R&D time. That is a higher, still very low chance from everything that we've seen.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think we're going to get a pro version of this. I hope, I've said it, and I'm not the only person in this industry who's ever said it, but a PS4 powered thing that goes in there, I'd be cool with, but it doesn't seem.
So you're saying the pro version would essentially just be a dedicated handheld?
That's what I would like, yeah, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Where it's essentially a PS4 in the palm of your hands?
Correct, yeah.
So my first question there, because I've heard people say this a lot, and I think there's a lot of benefit from it. But at the same time, I hear a lot of people, as we've all said too, bemoan crossplay or cross-generational games. And you have to ask yourself, if Sony were to release a portable that was basically a portable PS4, they would feel the need to support it, and people would want it supported with new games to some degree. At what point do you think that a device like that would just end up being PlayStation Series S? And I mean that in the negative sense as much as the positive sense, because the positive sense of S is that it's very well priced and it's a good entry point. But it's something that if like Microsoft is wanting to support the S so that people feel like they can buy it and not feel like they're getting, you know, a lesser product outside of what they are already buying into, knowing it's lesser, like resolution and frame rate potentially. Instead, they want to make sure that you're not feeling lesser from the games and features that you have to use. And if Sony's doing this same thing, don't you think that comes with some expectation of PS5 games playing on it? But doesn't that mean all PS5 games have to essentially be made cross-gen?
No,
in perpetuity.
Not if you market it correct. If they
how would you market it?
If they marketed a PS4, like a PS4 in your palm of your hand, as can play PS4 games, can play PS Plus Essential, or not PS Plus Essential, but PS Plus Premium games, which means, and by that I mean classic games. So you can play PS1, PS2, PSP, PS4, and then you can cloud stream PS5. That seems like a perfect solution to me.
Okay, so while we're on the topic of cloud streaming PS5, what are your thoughts on the fact that the PS Portal cannot cloud stream PS5, at least at launch?
That doesn't make any fucking sense.
That's my thing. I've seen some people go, well, it'll keep you away from wanting to buy the PlayStation 5. And that may be true. There might be people who buy that in lieu of a PS5, but that's a very small market, first and foremost. This is already a niche product, and it would still be a niche product with cloud streaming capabilities. My bigger thing is that I think it shows how much Sony have not invested into having PS5 units readily available in their cloud streaming servers. Because if you remember, Xbox actually made a choice to partially hurt their in-store stock availability of Series X's so that they could make Series X chipsets to put into their server racks so that you could stream games on Project Cloud or X Cloud or whatever using the Series X as the basis of the one that you're streaming. So you'd get higher resolution, higher frame rates. PlayStation have not really done that. And I think you've noticed that Sony has not really talked about streaming PS5 games. You can do it from what I understand, but it's not something they really push. And I think it's because they don't have enough PS5 units in their servers. And so suddenly, if you make that feature a big tentpole of this handheld, you need to invest and take away from the supply of what you hope to be one of your best-selling consoles in order to fund that. I think if there was an easy way for them to add PS5 server racks in and stream, they would probably do that. And I don't think it's out of the question that they may add that later down the line to the PS Portal, should that be something they choose to start focusing on investing in.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. It seems weird that it's not something that can happen, but I think it mostly seems weird as because I do buy the argument of, well, why would you buy a PS5? To a degree.
But does Sony care? As long as you're buying the games or buying their subscription services, they're making what they want off of you. They hardly make any money off of the actual console.
Yeah, but if
the console facilitates a purchase of a game on their ecosystem, which is what they want.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
And as long as you can stream the games, if you can buy a PS5 game and say, hey, I'm buying God of War, but I have to stream it to this because it can't play it any other way, they've gotten your money.
Yeah,
and they got $200, whatever percentage of that they were getting. They're actually seeing as profit.
That's fair. It's a very valid point. I don't know. I don't know why they're not doing it. Maybe they'll add it. I hope they do. I probably wouldn't use it. The problem with this device is I don't see it ever leaving my house. Like even if I bought one and I was like, all right, I'm going to bring this to work and connect to the Wi-Fi, undoubtedly it's going to be hard to play, even if the Wi-Fi is good, because it's not right there. So it doesn't seem like it's a portable. It seems like it's a second screen experience.
Yeah, on a consumer level, looking at it and understanding what it is, I think what you would compare it to is something like the Logitech, what is it, G Stream or whatever it's called?
Yes, I believe so.
G Cloud handheld portable. So good example, right? This is a $300 product. Very similar form factor, very similar use case. You can stream games from your own computer or from services like GeForce Now or Xbox Game Pass. The problem that I see for it is if you look at it like that, right, it feels like a good deal, even though it's a little more limited as to what you can use it for, but it's $100 less. So in that market, it feels like, oh, yeah. But then there's the market of looking at it from more of a handheld side, which is not really a fair place to put it. It does kind of feel like, well, for the same price, I could buy a Switch Lite that can play games regardless. And then I can still stream games that Nintendo views as streamable to this if I want to do that. Or for $100 more, I can get a Switch. And then for $100 more than that, I can get a Steam Deck. And it starts being like, okay, the Steam Deck can play games like Armored Core 6 and Baldur's Gate 3 on the go.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all about where you try to compare it to. I do think that there's a market for this. I think it's a small, very niche one. And I think for me as an individual, I think the price is too much for what it is because I look at what other things I could buy in lieu of that would be better for me. And then I go, yeah, I would prefer to have that. But that's because I'm not the targeted consumer group for this product. So it makes it really hard to have this conversation around it because my personal feelings of it as a device is it's not something I had a want for or a need for. Like I have more of a need for a dedicated device because I like dedicated devices that aren't reliant on all sorts of other issues, like the fact that since you can't stream games from the cloud on this thing, if you take this on vacation and your power goes out at your house and it turns your PlayStation 5 off, and that thing can only remote play into your PlayStation 5 when it's in rest mode and can awake it from that, then suddenly your whole week vacation where you were planning on having this to dabble in here and there doesn't work anymore. It's completely a useless device until either you or someone else can get to your house and turn your PlayStation back on for you. Do you hear how asinine that sounds? That was the first thing that came to my mind. Someone's like, I could take it on vacation. Okay. 2 days into your week-long vacation, power goes out. And it crossed my mind because like once a day, my power goes out lately. I assume it's because of the power grid struggling under all these ACs. But it's like, that's a useless product if my PlayStation just turned off. What do you do at that point? Are you mad?
Definitely mad at yourself. You got to be by getting duped. Because that's the thing. For me, this is I don't feel like sitting on the couch staring at the TV. I'm going to lay out in bed and stare at a smaller screen. It's a very first world convenience device. It's not a realistic thing. I don't get it. I get it. People like me, I would watch more baseball games because I can throw the baseball game on the TV and play on the portal. I get it to that extent, but I don't really see the real world use case for this outside of, yeah, I just want to play Baldur's Gate 3 in bed. You know, that I get, but it's $200 to do that.
I think it also kind of spits in the face of, clearly there's people that want to do this anyway, but like for me, the whole point of playing on the PS5 is that it's more powerful, or it's as powerful at a much cheaper cost as like a pretty solid gaming PC. And so I want it hooked up to a big OLED where I can see the detail and I can see the 4K resolution or the drop and experience the higher frame rate, whatever it be. So like the fact that this doesn't have an OLED screen and that it's only 1080p, it's like at some point it just starts to feel like I'd rather just buy a Switch and play a Switch if I'm going to already expect lower frame rates or lower resolution, but I can play it without any kind of way down. So again, it's like nowhere do I look at this and think, yeah, this is a cool idea for me. But for anybody that this does feel like this fits a use for you, if you use a backbone and it drains your phone battery when you try and stream to it, or if you have to exit streaming or remote play in order to answer notifications, then restart it back up, and that's a pain and a hassle. Yes, awesome. I'm glad this will do something for you. And it seems like a relatively well-built device. I just don't exist in the market. And it's a very small market of people that this is made for.
Exactly.
That's really all I have. So, next piece of news then?
Yeah, hit me with the next one.
Next month's PS Plus Essential game is rumored to be the studio-killing game Saints Row, the reboot, in case you weren't aware. The rumor comes from Bill Kuhn, the person who's been actively leaking the PS Plus games early for years now. The announcement of the full lineup is also rumored for August 30th. Sony is continuing... Oh, sorry.
Honestly, I have nothing to say, so keep going.
All I have to say is that good get for PlayStation Plus, because it is a relatively new game that is at least generating interest in people. But this does nothing for me. This doesn't change whether or not I'm willing to try the game. I haven't really just loved any of the Saints Row games enough to beat any of them, and that's not going to change now. Or it seems unlikely to change.
I'm happy this is here because I've had intrusive thoughts about wanting to know. So now I'm really glad that I can find out and not have to spend my own money to do it outside of paying the fucking monthly fee or the yearly fee or whatever. But
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm interested. I'm like, oh, cool. Saints Row. I don't have to buy that filth, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I saw your face when I said what I said. I played Saints Row 1, didn't beat it. Saints Row 2, didn't beat it.
Ugh.
Did not play 3. I played 4, didn't beat it.
3's the best one.
Oh, I've heard. I'm just letting you know my opinions are based off of a small selection size. So I don't have like strong opinions towards the series other than the fact that none of them have ever compelled me to beat them.
This fucking guy. Saints Row 2 has the poop flinging mini game. Did you do that?
Conversely, no.
You didn't do the poop side mission?
No.
Then you
I'm
didn't
sorry.
play Saints Row 2.
That's fine. You can. I am telling you, I didn't beat it. I played maybe 4 hours of Saints Row 2, if that. I played probably 10 hours of Saints Row 4, and I played probably 10 hours of Saints Row 1.
Wow.
That is my history with the franchise.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I've laughed at moments of it, but I also think the series got progressively more kooky. I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's just how it is.
Respect.
Hey, it is what it is. You've also got to remember that those aren't my type of games. I have not played, nor do I have any interest in playing Grand Theft Auto 5. I've played an hour of it, and as soon as I was playing, I was like, yeah, this is this type of game, and I don't have much drive toward this type of game anymore.
You're a psychopath.
Clearly, but that's okay. At least I know what I like. I would rather play The Order 10 times than play Grand Theft Auto 5.
Read the next piece of news, you fucking weirdo. Jesus
I
Christ.
know it. All right. So, Chris, Sony is continuing its acquisition spree. Did you hear about this? Yeah. They announced a purchase with high-end audio company Audeeze.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What do they do? What do they make?
Oh, they make headphones.
Oh, I set you up. So, alley-oop, and you didn't take it.
I know. Audeeze, like Bungie, will continue to make third-party products while benefiting from being a PlayStation company. PlayStation intends to cooperate. I think collaborate with maybe in what I don't know. Cooperate feels like a weird word here. Cooperate is where like you double check. I think it's supposed to be
collaborate, and I auto-corrected it. Yeah, it's supposed to be collaborate.
Okay, intends to collaborate with Audeeze to improve the Pulse headset and their 3D audio capabilities. So this is another one of those weird lateral movements where the entire purchase is just to strengthen the rest of the brand's sections where they feel like they want to start focusing on. I don't have a ton to say about this. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's some big, great thing. I don't really wear headphones while gaming very often. My ears get sweaty. One of the worst parts about social gaming is that I have to have a headphone on my head. I have a big head, man. It starts to make my ears sweat. It pushes into my jaw. I've had multiple. Like, the headphones I have now are probably the best, and they're Razer. I can't even remember, Kraken Tournament Edition or something like that.
Those are the ones I used to use for the show.
I really like those. And they're the closest I've had to where my head doesn't hurt after 30 minutes of playing. I've had multiple headsets, PlayStation branded, non-PlayStation branded. And it's like, I have such a big head that putting them on puts so much pressure on like the top of where my jaw pivots that my jaw would physically hurt. And like my earlobes, or not my earlobes, but the little weird fleshy piece right there at the, crest of your ear. I don't know what you call that. It's not really crest of your ear, but that would start to hurt. Yeah, I don't like headphones a whole lot.
Doesn't sound like it. God damn. Tell me how you really
That's why I was so into the idea of TV-based speaker 3D audio. And it's worked great on most games. But something to note, I had a huge problem with Immortals of Aveum where as I was playing it the first time, everybody's audio sounded like it was clipping. Like it was just like blowing past what they were supposed to be doing. And it sounded awful. Like, they talk so loud that it would like crackle. And I was like, what the hell is happening? And how can I find nothing about this? And so I restarted the game and it was still doing it. And I thought it's got to be something to do with the 3D audio. And so I turned it off and it fixed it entirely. I don't have the problem anymore. So finally had an issue where 3D audio through TV speakers was not the answer.
That sucks. You know what I did notice though?
What's that?
I have a Dolby Atmos speaker system. Everyone's been talking about Xbox has a lot of lag. I can't use Atmos during Netflix. I can't use it for any of that, but I can use it on PS5.
Yep. That is true. Did you see the reasoning why?
No, I did not.
So since the PlayStation actually has a chipset and an engine for its audio processing, which is one of the big things that Mark Cerny wanted to go through. He talked about it in the unveiling thing. Dolby Atmos is actually leveraging the PlayStation 3D audio. I can't remember the name of that engine right now. What was it called? It's killing me. PS5 3D audio engine. Yeah. Tempest. It is utilizing Tempest 3D audio and working in conjunction with it so that it doesn't have to filter through something else first, and which is introducing that delay. So pretty interesting, right?
Yes. Sorry. I got ADHD spaced out for a sec. It happens.
You're fine. Rapid fire news. We have Phasmophobia has been delayed to October due to some issues that the developer's facing. But let's be honest, this delay feels like far more appropriate.
Yeah, better timing. That's another one we're going to have to add to the fucking list is Phasmophobia.
Chris, you will play Phasmo with me in VR.
I will play Phasmo in VR.
Oh, that's all I needed.
I will.
John will play with us, so I feel good about that. Stingray X will play with us.
Oh, happy birthday.
Maybe we can get some more people.
I believe it's his birthday, so happy birthday.
I think you are correct. I saw that earlier, and I meant to say it, and I got busy at work. So, yeah, happy birthday a day late. Sorry, John.
Shout out.
I mean, we're saying it on your birthday. You're just hearing it in the future.
Yeah.
Take that as you will. Me Games has been shut down after 12 years. The studio was behind titles such as Desperados 3 and Shadow Tactics. I hate to say this, but those are games that I know by name, and I've never heard anybody say they've played. So while it's sad, this feels like a low-profile loss, if we're being honest. I guess that's the nature of a very, very competitive gaming industry at the moment.
Yeah, I liked some of their games. Desperados 3 was cool. I just bought those Shadow Tactics games. Guess I did it a little too late. But yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens here with those franchises. Do they just disappear? Who owns them? It'll be interesting to see. But bon voyage to Me Games.
All right, guys. We're going to go into the part of the show where we answer questions that we did not have a good way to filter them in during the main news or whatever other segments we were talking about. And we've gotten through most of them today, but there are a few that we have that do not go into there. So the first one that comes to mind here that we see is from one of our other patrons, TTDog666. He says, question for next week. Any books that should be turned into games? Personally, I saw Metro 2033 as an RPG, with the different stations being locations and towns, and the tunnels between them being ideal for the combat encounters. Loads of factions already there to make use of. And then he also noted, not that the first-person shooter take on the game is bad, just not what he originally envisioned for that property being translated into a game. Chris, you do a lot more reading than I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like this is going to be in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I got a couple that I was thinking of. Obviously, like The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson would be excellent. Even Cosmere would be excellent.
Any Brandon Sanderson product, is going to work.
Yep.
But here's the thing. Well, but it's all going to be a very specific genre. I mean, those are all clearly fantasy RPGs.
100%, yeah.
So,
what I would take is, I don't know what genre it would be, because there's a part of me that says it would be a WRPG, and there's a part of me that says it would be a walking Telltale type game. But The Stand by Stephen King.
Oh yeah. I've always thought Stephen King's Dark Tower series could make for a really interesting game that was it's funny that I say this because I feel like Remnant is basically that idea just shifted around a whole lot.
I guess, yeah.
Like, you get what I mean though, right? Where it's like you have all these connected things and all these universes that interact with each other. Because like, if I'm not mistaken, it isn't like it considered a Dark Tower sub-story. Like it falls under that, even though it
a lot of his
later.
books are Dark Tower.
Exactly. And they're kind of just like, I wouldn't call it the multiverse, but I guess it's really what it is. It's just a bunch of universes that are connected. And
no, I think they all take place in the same universe. Like I think Salem's Lot is in the same universe as It, which is in the same universe as Dark Tower. I think they're all on the same planet, all happening at the same time.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. Okay, that's fair. But yes, I think that would make for an interesting one. That'd be pretty cool. I was going to say, this seems really off the wall potentially, and I am aware of that. But I actually think a video game adaptation, and it could work in today's market as long as they make it with the right budget in mind and work with the right developer, be more of an independent style game.
Oh, okay.
But I think more of a point and click action or a point and click adventure game for the series of Unfortunate Events books. Now that comes with the problem of if they're direct adaptations, you're going to kind of know what to look for and go through. So that makes it hard. But maybe instead what you can do is do the series of Unfortunate Events things, but follow characters who are just also part of the VFD and whose parents, because there's other characters that you brush up against in those books that you see very little bitty pieces of, and you don't get to really learn more about them. So you can do what I've always thought The Last of Us should have done originally, which was just follow two new people in that same world who have similar versions. So you can do that and set up a lot of interesting puzzles and encounters. I don't know. I really fell in love with point and click adventure games whenever I did that little stint of playing them. They're very fun.
They are fun. I got a good one for you. It's happened, but it's never happened to the scale I want it to happen to. We've gotten a couple games in this franchise. So I would like Supermassive. I think that's the what did they make? They made Man of Medan, right? I'm trying to make sure I'm thinking of the
yeah. They made Man of Medan,
Until
Medan,
Dawn.
and
That's
then they
the game
made
I'm
Until
thinking of.
Dawn. Yeah.
So I
And
would
they also
want
made
Supermassive to make a Goosebumps game.
Oh, okay.
That's what I would like. Yeah.
Also, not gonna lie, and that's kind of what I was saying with like even a Telltale style point and click adventure, but more point and click adventure like the first episode of Walking Dead, where you still have to actually puzzle solve and do stuff like that, and less like late games where all you're doing is making decisions while cutscenes play out.
Yeah.
You get what I mean? Like,
Yes,
I still
get you.
like the later Telltale games, but I really liked that The Walking Dead felt like a point and click game and a narrative adventure game.
Mhm.
Both. That's what I'm talking about. So I'm kind of talking about that with Goosebumps too. That feels like Telltale Goosebumps would also be sick. Just throwing that out there.
Telltale Goosebumps would be sick. I would also be super down with a like. I know it's really tired to say like a grim and dark thing, especially for Goosebumps, but make like think about like the what's the one, the ventriloquist story.
Oh yeah.
But that is like the setting of a AAA big budget like linear game. Like in the
I feel
vein
like
of
that's
Immortals.
weird because I am with you, but I also feel like inherently if you do that, some of the wackiness of Goosebumps, which I think is inherent to its design, would get lost. And I feel like you'd have people who'd be complaining that the adaptation lost part of the soul of Goosebumps. But at the same time, I think it's interesting. Like,
I would be down for it.
Scary stories to tell in the dark, narrative adventure. That's not. And what's great is that that's just a compendium. So you could like adapt some of the actual stories, and then you could write new ones.
Yeah,
which is basically what Supermassive was trying to do with Man of Medan, or with the Dark Pictures anthology, which is Man of Medan is one of those games.
Right. I would take Goosebumps. There's one more. It would be the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. That's like a.
I don't think I know what that is.
That's like you could do either an open world fantasy RPG with that, or you could do like a Sony San Diego like God of War type game with it. Either one of those, I would be super down. You should listen to the First Law or read it.
It has kind of happened. They have made. It's in the same vein as Harry Potter. Like I think up until this year, if someone said they wanted a Harry Potter game, you know what they meant. They don't want a Harry Potter book adaptation game, or movie adaptation game. You want a Harry Potter game, and we got that this year. And I know I haven't finished it, but I still think it's a really well-made game. And
I think
it's
it's great. I haven't finished it. No,
I need to go back and finish it. That's one of the other games. I am genuinely surprised that we have never gotten like a full-on RPG Witcher-style version of Chronicles of Narnia.
Oh,
like
God,
of like that seems so ripe for interesting gameplay and interesting world and choice building and following different people. And there's so much lore within that you can kind of choose anytime you want and play off of it. I can't believe that someone hasn't wanted to do that.
Dude, I mean, open a Game of Thrones AAA game.
I know it. I can't believe HBO wasn't trying to capitalize on that. Dude, like, I almost guarantee you, they did make the Telltale Game of Thrones game.
Well, and there's
but
an
I
Atlas
almost
game.
guarantee you. Oh, yeah. That's true. They did do it once then. But I'm really surprised that you didn't get, like...
Game of Thrones.
Atlas that is
published.
Insane.
No, Atlas developed. I think HBO published, it looks like. No, Cyanide Studios. Considering they don't exist anymore, that's an interesting name.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a couple of book series like that you think, but what I thought of as soon as you said Game of Thrones is I think that there's an easy pitch for, you know how Monolith did the Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor?
Yeah.
Dude, throw it to them and just be like, here you are. use the Nemesis system and build you a story and do an open world set within A Song of Fire and Ice, or that whole setup. I don't know. I'm surprised that didn't happen either.
Yeah. Let me see if I can think of one more good one. No, I mean, there's definitely a ton more. Even like Lord of the Rings hasn't really been touched to a degree that
it's had a few, but it's not. It's like I give shout out to Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor for really trying to push that. And there's also some other great games. Like War in the North is a pretty cool game for them. Like it's had more than a lot of series.
Yeah,
I'll give it that much. It's had far more original games made for it than we've seen from, again, like Chronicles of Narnia. All it has is movie tie-in games,
right?
Like the Prince Caspian game.
No,
I'm pretty sure that might be the only one, actually.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question because there's a lot of stuff that coming off the top of my head, like I would think of, but I wonder about some like more interesting stuff, like a turn-based 1984 game, like an RPG set in that universe. There's stuff where there's a lot of like even Clockwork Orange universe, or a horror game based on House of Leaves, like stuff like that. There's tons of stuff.
So I know it won't happen, or at least it seems so unlikely. But I cannot believe someone hasn't tried to make like a Loco Roco style game or some kind of indie 2D platformer side scroller game for the Very Hungry Caterpillar. Where,
okay.
Dude, that is like the most gameplay driven story idea ever. You just keep eating shit to get through bigger, like to solve bigger and bigger problems. Like that seems like such low hanging fruit for something that has such an iconic art style. Like, dude, is that basically Flow? Is that game company's Flow? Just
no, it's
the Very Hungry
Katamari Damacy.
Yeah, Damacy. Yeah, that's also fair.
Here's my last one because I just thought of it. You remember 12 Minutes?
Okay,
a game like that, but based on 11/22/63 by Stephen King.
Okay. Actually,
do you know the premise of that? Should I explain it? Is it a spoiler to say what the premise is?
I don't know.
Because I feel like I need to explain it.
That's a rough one for anybody listening who doesn't know the context.
Because
okay, go ahead.
the cover of the book says JFK slain. So that's not a spoiler of what he's doing. So basically the main character, the main character is going back in time. Yeah, I mean, if I told if you know the ending, if I told the ending, that would be fucked up. I got spoiled halfway through the book and I'm pissed. Either way, the main character can go back in time and change the past, or he goes back in time to continue trying to change the past and stop JFK's assassination. What I really like about this twist on time travel, though, is that his time continues running. So if he's in the past for a year, he lives that year. He doesn't go back to his state before that. So I would do that, and I would make the game like Sifu, where every time you go in, it's different and you're older.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't finish, the game ends with you dying, and then you have to start it again, make different decisions, stuff like that.
That's not bad.
Thank you.
That's actually pretty good. I'll throw that to you. I don't know. I don't think there's any big ones left for me other than that. I mean, a lot of Stephen King stuff is just going to naturally kind of work because of the way he writes.
Mm-hmm.
And he's so into lore dumping that it's like you have so much to work with.
An isometric multiplayer game based on it. I'm surprised that actually hasn't happened. You play the 4 kids and one person plays the clown.
Hear me out. A Silent Hill style It game kind of sounds like it would work.
It does. It sounds cool.
If nothing else, a game like Outlast, because the whole thing about it is like you can't fight back against these things that aren't really happening. And so that plays perfectly into the idea of Outlast setup of you are moving through something that you're experiencing, but you have very little agency. The best you can do is try and hide and, avoid as many things as possible. I don't know. It's a good question.
It is.
Some of them I feel like have been done to some degree, so it starts feeling like, yeah, I'm surprised that you don't see stuff like that. Like last one, I know that we just said last one, but like I could actually see a genuinely great. It would only be for the first one though, because like it loses this afterwards. But from like a gameplay standpoint of how it would come together, I think you'd have a pretty great setup for like a Prince of Persia meets Mirror's Edge game that's based off of Maze Runner.
Okay.
And it's a roguelite with that type of movement to where every time that you go through the maze and find your way through, then you go back in and you restart and you try and get your perfect run to go through. It's basically Hades, but with like Prince of Persia.
Sounds like it's basically Ghost Runner.
Not entirely wrong. But where you do have to like combat the grievers or whatever the hell they called them in that.
A battle royale video game would be cool, like a off the book.
Yes, a battle royale video game would be very cool.
If Hunger Games wasn't for children, like a Hunger Games, like you have to go around and survive, and there's stealth mechanics, and that would be kind of fun as a multiplayer game.
Dude, it would never happen, but I mean this in the most real way. I would love to see someone do kind of like what Lies of P and what American McGee's Alice do, where you take something that's quite old and you just be like, yeah, it's going to be that story through a wildly different lens. I would love to see someone be bold enough to like take stories from the Bible and do that. Give me a Cain and Abel game. No one in their right mind will do that.
Listen,
I know that
a high quality game of you picking missions, and it's all stuff from the Bible, where there's like you pick a mission and it's like you have 40 days to build this fucking ark, bro.
Here it is. Hold on. Different developers. It's like an anthology. Different developers make different stories. So what you do is you'd get like a survival game for Noah's Ark, and you'd have 40 in-game days of having to gather wood and resources and animals and everything to make it. Yeah, and that's how you get through it. And then you'd have like From Software. From Software would From Software would be the David and Goliath. It would just be a boss fight.
Yeah, I was thinking Sony Santa Monica for that one.
I mean, okay, no, yeah.
I got a better one from Software.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Wait, no, I think I changed my answer because I was originally going to go with Jesus, and you have to fight out of heaven to get out of and back into the cave and move it.
Okay, but hold on, dude. A Diablo game, and this is not even that crazy, a Diablo style looter game where you play as Lucifer working his way on being cast out, basically. Like you're moving through heaven as you make your descent. That'd be pretty cool.
Okay, I've got a couple. This is a good idea. I've got a couple more. Okay. You've got here's
I've got the From Software game, by the way. I already know it.
I have the Hideo Kojima game.
Okay. Yeah.
His section of the game is just based on Jesus carrying the cross to where he dies. And then my other one, I think it would be like Double Fine would develop it. And it's the whole premise is, you know how Jesus turns water into wine and makes all the fish?
Yes.
The premise is you play as little like Pikmin type things who have to do that stuff because the man Jesus is God's. God wants you to think Jesus is his son and has powers, but he fucking doesn't. So he sends these little minions to like change the water into wine really fast and bring all the fish and all of this stuff. And that's Double Fine.
That's not the worst idea.
Yeah. Fuck it. Is either Double Fine or it's just the Pikmin guys who do it. And it's a Pikmin game.
So From Softwares is just Jonah and the whale, and you play as Jonah and you're trying to escape the whale like Bloodborne, where you're trying to escape the hunt, right? So you have to work your way through the innards of the whale, and the innards of the whale have like different boss fights, and
that feels better for the people who behind Echo the Dolphin, because I feel like you'd have to be swimming that whole time.
No. It'd be like where you have like shelves, like there's water down there, but then there's like like you get to like walk over his rib bones. Like you can get real crazy with it and have like
That
a
would be
real,
pretty cool. Yeah.
that kind of grim dark art style that they used. I think that could be really cool. I
would
know
take that.
we are undoubtedly offending someone right now, but here's the thing. I've said it on the show before. I don't talk about it very often. I am not a believer. I don't think that that's a big deal personally. I think everyone should be able to believe what they want. And I don't I guess the way this, I'm not upset that anyone else believes something differently. Most of my friends are very religious people, and I like having conversations with them because I find religious ideology so interesting and intriguing, and the stories are so interesting. I think they're interesting. So having that, I think that that's true of any. I mean, I think most religions have very interesting stories that you could do a lot with, but the problem is that the problem with that take being potentially offensive is that you take these things as we view them differently, right? I view them as parables and stories that you can have fun with and twist things around to tell new stories and shock and awe, and you don't, and I understand why, but or some of you may not, but I still think that's a cool idea.
I do too.
That should be Sony's PS Plus games. That's their anthology partnership, and they just be like the books of the Bible. It's funny. This idea, in a weird way, actually came to me about 3 weeks ago while I was in Sam's buying groceries because I saw what was called the Action Bible, and it looked like if you took the Bible and just like. How like Dragon Ball Z came out and then like years later they came out with Dragon Ball Z Kai that cut all the filler and just had all the cool action moments. It's like if you took the Bible, cut the filler, and all you had was like banger after banger of Jesus and God being amazing. and it's presented like a graphic novel. Dude, I looked at it, I was like, this is incredible, and I don't know who this is for because they are cutting so much stuff, but they're finding ways to tell biblical stories in a faster, more action-oriented style. I don't know. It made me think of that. Like,
I would want a game
making movies
that retells the Bible, but it's like if you've seen The Other Guys, obviously.
I haven't actually. I know what you're talking about, but I haven't.
Do you know the beginning scene? What happens with the bush?
No clue. Isn't it the Mark Wahlberg, Will Ferrell?
Yes.
Isn't that who's in it?
Yes.
And The Rock is in it as somebody.
He's in it for a little bit. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I won't spoil it, so we'll
movie.
just move on. It's a fantastic movie.
He keeps telling me the same, but
watch it. And
I don't really love
next week.
I don't love Mark Wahlberg or The Rock a whole lot, so it's not stacking up as something I want to do.
What? You don't like Marky Mark?
You sound like you've been watching The Happening.
What do you mean, man?
Yeah.
Science, man.
It's okay, man. It's okay. I understand. All right, we've got another question here. All right. Josh Shoop asks, Baldur's Gate 3 is said to have a map that is 3.5 times bigger than Skyrim. At what point do you think maybe we need to cut back on map sizes, if at all? Personally speaking, seeing a ginormous map is daunting. It's an immediate turnoff when they talk about a map that is so big that it would take anything over 15 to 20 minutes to traverse, even with a mode of transportation. In my mind, the ideal size for a map would be that of GTA 5. Big enough to have much different areas, but also not be to the point of being ridiculous. What say you, Chris?
It depends on how it's handled. I think the way Baldur's Gate handles it is it's small. I would have to imagine when they say that, they mean if you laid all the sections of the map you go to together, it would be bigger than Skyrim's map. But the first act is in one area, and you do stuff in that area, and then you go to the second area. So to me, it never felt like, oh no, this map takes forever to traverse. And especially in Baldur's Gate, there's always something to do behind every corner. So it's really not that big an issue. But I do think some games have too big of maps. One of the things I'm worried about with Starfield, Invisible Walls Be Damned, is how I can't imagine traversing all those planets. Even if a lot of them don't have stuff on it, just the idea of there's 1,000 planets, I can land on all of them. That's already intimidating enough. So
And then even if each of them only has a map size that's equivalent to, say,
Megaton.
Morrowind.
Okay.
Morrowind's not that big of a game. I mean that because you're only playing in Verdanfall. So when you look at all that, I think the problem with that is, like you said, 1,000 Morrowinds is so much.
Yeah, that's scary.
And Morrowind's not big on its own, but 1,000 variations of that same size is daunting, which is kind of going against my excitement for Starfield. Actually watching them run around and play, I was like, I don't know that I want that. It's actually why I don't play that much No Man's Sky. Like, I appreciate No Man's Sky, and when I do play it, I tend to have fun. But I quickly get out of it because I grow weary very quickly of the land on a planet, run around, get mine resources so that you can leave and go to another planet, run around. Like, yeah, they've done so much more. And I know that's a vast underselling of what the game is now, but that doesn't really speak to me. Once I've done the break through the atmosphere, do some dogfights and break down the atmosphere on another planet, I'm like, oh, that's cool. And interestingly enough, Starfield doesn't even have that. Like, there's load screens between planets, and that's fine. As long as you know what you're getting into beforehand, it doesn't really matter. It's just half of what makes those games interesting to me is gone.
Yeah.
Though, to be fair to Starfield, The Outer Worlds did the exact same thing, and I think that game's incredible. So it's clearly possible to be good. But also, The Outer Worlds is like 10 planets.
Yeah. I wonder if we'll get a Starfield trailer that says, from the guys that originally brought you Fallout. You know what I mean? Like they did in the...
Yeah. So here's my worry with Starfield. How clumsy is the UI going to be for exploring these 1,000 planets? If you can't break down atmosphere and visit them, how do you go between these thousands of planets? Is it a very cumbersome UI state? Is it just flipping through menus? Because one thing I'll give No Man's Sky is that, like, yeah, you do choose which galaxy you want to go to, but then once you're in that galaxy, you have the freedom to fly around each planet and just naturally land and leave, land and leave, land and leave. And since you don't have the ability to land and leave and break atmosphere without loading, that makes me think that you're probably not going to be able to fly around.
Probably.
And so how do you, like, but then again, they've talked about, like, you have a ship and you have dogfights. But I have this feeling, and I love Kingdom Hearts 3 and Kingdom Hearts 2 and Kingdom Hearts 1. I love the gummy ship missions, but I have a feeling it's going to be a lot more like gummy ship missions where you have this free space where there's planets, but then you just fight stuff in this kind of preloaded area, and then you go to another planet. I hope to be wrong. It's just, I don't know. A lot of what's happening with Starfield right now, not even in any other way than just, it's hard to know what to expect. As certain things become more known, it feels like, okay, it's not offering the type of game I thought it was. And that's not a bad thing because I don't want it to be a lot like No Man's Sky. But No Man's Sky does do some things right. So,
yeah, it does. Know. Interesting.
To that end, Josh, to answer the question, yes.
No.
Map sizes can be a problem, but like Chris said, it just depends on what you do within them.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I would tend to lean on the side of maps being smaller rather than larger. But if you're going to be larger, I personally think that I don't want that to be in the marketing. I hate when games are like, we're 3.5 times the size of Skyrim. I'm like, that makes me actively not want to play your game. But now if the game just happens to be that big, but you're telling me all these other cool things and I start playing it and I go, wow, this game's really big. Then suddenly it's like, oh, I just discovered that and I'm already having a good time. The problem by telling me is that you create a barrier of entry for me where I go, do I really want to give that much of my time? I wish I did not know Persona 5 took 100 hours.
Oh, just play it.
It's a barrier. It's a mental barrier.
I'm going to end this map conversation on an analogy, right? Or not an analogy, but an anecdote, a story. Okay.
Okay.
I've maintained in all of my life that you should always pretend you have a smaller penis than you do.
Okay.
Right.
Where's this parable going?
So I think video game maps are very much like penises. where you undersell so that when I see what you have and it's more than I expected, right, I'm happy, right? No girl.
I call it the Roadhouse effect.
Sure, absolutely. No girl is going to be upset. You walk into Roadhouse. Go ahead. No girl is going to be upset, right? If you're a really funny guy, nice guy, you tip waitresses well, you're very polite to service people, all that great stuff that women look for. But on the first date, you're like, hey, just to warn you, I'm not the biggest down there, right? And she sits there, she's like, this is a great guy. I can deal with that. I have a vibrator at home. This is fine. So then you go back and she's expecting like a 2 to 3 incher and you flop out a 5er. She's happy. But you go to a date and you're like, oh, my dick's 3 times the size of Ron Jeremy's. You're going to have a fucking problem when you get into the bedroom. You know what I mean?
I think we agree here.
We do
on the marketing side of things. Yeah. Undersell, over deliver.
Exactly.
Yeah. I say that all the time, though. I really do. I tell people sometimes use the Roadhouse effect. That's like every time I've ever been to Roadhouse, they tell me that it's going to be 45 minutes. I wait 15 minutes and they tell me my seat's ready. And then normally I'm pissed when I go place and they say 45 minutes because I'm like, there's no way. And because every time they say 45 minutes anywhere else, it is 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I like that Roadhouse. I kind of have that like, well, it's going to take 45 minutes, but it's never actually taken me 45 minutes. And so every single time that they tell me in 15 minutes that I'm ready, I'm like, damn, they're on their game. I know it's just a lie.
Yeah.
But I like the lie.
Yeah. It's so that you're comfortable for 45.
It's true.
Don't tell girls you have a big penis. Tell them you have a small penis and surprise them with a mediocre penis. And that's what Todd Howard should have done with Starfield. Todd Howard should have said he had a small planet.
Taking the penis analogy to his "it just works." Really working wonders over here.
You can leave your pubes anywhere and they'll be there for the rest of the time on Earth.
I just imagine Todd Howard going on dates with women. Like he's probably married and happy, but in this scenario I'm creating of Todd Howard going on dates with girls, and he's like, he walks out, they're talking and everything. They start talking about the boudoir, and he's like, listen, it just works. And then he gets in the room, and much like every Bethesda game, it's just a glitchy, buggy mess. It can't stay up. It's like flipping and flying. I swear it wasn't like this earlier. But
every fifth thrust, he's inside, like glitches into her and then pops back out.
He clips through her.
When he comes, he flies through the air. Falls through the bed. Oh my god. You know what this conversation is really good for? We have a section of the club here at Triangle Squared nightclub. It's called the Velvet's Corner, where we get sexy.
It is called the Velvet's Corner. I think it's time to get sexy. There's technically a 2 for here because we have an additional question that comes in response to Velvet's Corner.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's time to go ahead and break the walls off this bad boy. Throw the hot dog down the hallway if you catch my grift. Grift.
Are you sure that's the word you're trying to say?
I'm grifting, so yes. I'm being a grifter.
You're fucking grifting me with the end of that goddamn theme song.
I'm edging you.
Oh my god. It's only like 15 weeks.
Much like PlayStation and Blink-182. You're being edged.
Where are you? 'Cause I'm so close now.
Oh god. All right. So Velvet's Corner this week is interestingly worded. I think he means Nartek, but I'm going to read it the way he said it. He says, if the Triangle Squared crew, parentheses, Brett, Chris, Saul, and Blake, were characters in an RPG, what class would you be? What would your signature weapon be? What would your skills be? Who would be the tragic mid-game death? And who would be the one who turns evil in the sequel? This question's sponsored by Sea of Stars because I was playing it when I wrote it. So here we have
Game Pass.
Here we have 4 people, right? Somehow the ghost of Blake Popes. Also, I think we can say right now, Blake is the mid-game tragic death.
No,
because he always did. Oh, okay. All right. I would love to hear yours, but if you want to start with each role, however you want to do this, right? So
let's go with mid-game tragic death first, because I think this is going to be our biggest disagreement, and I think it's very clearly Saul is the mid-game.
I was actually about to say, considering that Saul got a blood clot and then has not been seen on the show.
He had like 4 episodes back before.
He did.
But here's the thing: Blake has been on an episode of Triangle Squared more recently than Saul has. So Saul is,
but he hasn't.
Yes, he was on Triangle Squared spoiler stats.
Yeah, that's true. All right, fair enough. Continue.
So Saul is the tragic death. I think Blake is the evil one.
Blake turns evil?
Yeah.
That actually makes sense because he's an Xbox player who flip-flops back and forth between the two.
Right, exactly. And he also destroyed Midweek Matinee. So
he did. That's true. Yeah, it was said he would bring balance to the podcast, not leave it shrouded in darkness.
Yeah, right. And then we had to watch 9 Fast and the Furious movies, and then we never did it again.
Dude, Blake, I love you. And I say this with all of the love in the world, but I have never found something so funny as Chris begging you to watch the MCU for Midweek Matinee, you quitting the show, and a week later watching the entire MCU in less than a week. It is...
I still think
dude, I swear to you, Blake did that out of spite, and I love him even more for it. I don't know what would possess someone to be like, nah, I don't want to watch the MCU. Quit the podcast where you've been asked to watch the MCU and immediately go, fuck it, I'm going to watch them all in record time.
Including like fucking WandaVision. This man was through the MCU in like a week and a half.
Yeah, and like everything the MCU had to offer. Yeah, not just the movies. Everything that was out at the time.
All of it.
Incredible. Genuinely incredible, Blake. Fucking OG GOAT move. That's like big dick walk in the room, swinging shit around. Like, yeah, you are the guy who says you have a 3-fer and then you whip out an 8-fer. You know what I mean? Like, you're fucking... He's going for it. That is one of the funniest things I've ever experienced.
I still think a little bit
in
of
my
tangent,
life.
But I still think the funniest thing about Midweek Matinee is the last episode is titled Fast 9 and then in parentheses end of the line. And we didn't intend to stop doing the show at that point. We just stopped doing the show. So the last episode of Midweek is called End of the Line.
Also, that it's so funny that all that comes right after like the late, like, you know, if we were a sitcom, the late season episodes where you're saying goodbye to all the characters, and we had the Fast 7 goodbye to Blake and Josh.
That was good. I still love that.
Yeah.
And honestly, a little peek behind the curtain, I think we'd still be doing Midweek Matinee if we didn't want to put it on video. If we'd never started thinking about video and then I just tried to edit it and gave up, we'd probably still be doing it bi-weekly.
You might be right. But to be fair, you literally could do that right now with the episodes we even had, and you've not.
I could. So, if I edit those episodes and you're like, fine,
there are 3 episodes of, if I'm not mistaken, right? 3 episodes of Midweek Matinee that have never been heard.
Listen. Top half Hulk, top or bottom half Hulk is still the funniest conversation we've ever had. And like, I'm sure listeners might get it. Every once in a while, I'm stoned on this show. Like every once in a while, like you'll see like I've got different vape. That's a weed vape. Okay. So I've been high on the show, but
yeah, I'm learning something new,
but I was fucking high on that show.
That checks out.
We were
talking. So much more makes sense. I knew that you smoked, Chris, and I knew that you did it back then, but I'm not going to lie to you. I say this as somebody who's well aware of this own aspect of myself. I've noticed that since I don't do a lot of things, your worldview, because I don't surround myself with a lot, or I used to not. I'm a lot better now, but I used to not surround myself with any people that do the thing. So I will tell you right now, if I don't see people smoke, and I never smell cigarette smoke or anything around them, I assume that they don't smoke. And I mean that of anything. If I've never seen someone drink, my assumption is that they don't drink.
Yeah.
Because that's what I do. So it's like I am naturally accidentally projecting my worldview onto these people. And I have had times where I don't think even worse of them, but I've had times where I've known someone for like 8 years and then I see them smoke and I'm like, my entire view of you has changed because I made a fucking presumption that was not fair.
Yeah.
So no joke, Chris, I thought that you had just quit smoking.
It's funny because I had, and then very recently I picked it back up, and I'm going to stop again. I just missed it. So every once in a while I've just like taken a hit, and it's never been anything crazy. But that episode, that was like when I was at my worst of smoking, and I was so blazed on that show, and it was just such a good time. That's probably the most fun I've had recording that show. And
no one's even ever heard it.
I'll get it edited.
You say that, but the pot's making you lazy, Chris.
All right, Matt Walsh.
Wait, is that the dude from the Daily Wire?
Correct.
Okay, sorry. I don't keep up with it enough.
So Blake is the villain. He goes bad.
That seems fair.
What's his class?
He's
a sorcerer. He's a conjurer. You know why? Because he's an Xbox fan and they don't have any games, but they keep saying they do. So he just makes illusions.
Yeah, he's an illusionist magic. Yeah, he's an illusionist mage. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. We're poking fun, Blake. Calm down.
The special is it's called the Game Pass bomb. So he gets up and goes, "Give me all your free games, your 7.5s, your indie games." And then he throws it and kills.
That's like his limit break?
Yeah, exactly. It's a spirit bomb.
Okay.
But then we get protected
I feel confident with that.
Of our VR
an illusionist mage?
Yeah, I like that. Illusionist mage.
Okay, I like that. All right, and yeah, I do think I think he's funny, and he'd be the person that turns on us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because like one of us won't like Starfield. And that'll be where it comes to it, where we get on a show with him and he's like, "Oh, I love Starfield." And we're like, I don't know. There's invisible walls on the tutorial planet. And he just, Game Pass bombs us.
I like to think of him, if I can reference Tolkien for a second.
Sure. Who's that?
Oh, Tolkien? In case you don't know, author of a very famous book.
Yeah, 13
multiple very
why.
famous books. It's so funny because I'm talking about Boromir, and I just imagine Boromir giving all the members of the Fellowship of the Ring a tape for why he did what he did.
Frodo, you're my 13th, please.
It was always you.
You didn't take the eagles to Mount Mordor or whatever the fuck.
When Gandalf said, "Run, you fools," you didn't run.
Right.
No, but seriously, I was going to say I see Blake in this Sean Bean Boromir thing, where like he would betray us and he'd die. I'm kind of mixing characters. I know that's a little rough.
You know what it is?
So I guess Saul would be Boromir in this situation where he's the tragic mid-death, but that feels wrong because Saul didn't betray anybody. He did leave the show, but that's okay.
He's the Quicksilver.
I talked to Saul so much that I know it's so funny to me. In my head, I think that there is at least one person who listens to this show that thinks that Saul left because of bad blood. I just know that it exists, and they think that we're just have this like facade that he didn't. But I see Saul so many times a week that it's not even funny. I honestly think I see Saul more now than I did when we were doing the podcast together. As funny as that is, I think that that's funny to throw out there. So Saul would be the Boromir / Aerith. Saul would be the Aerith.
Yeah,
that's pretty good, actually.
That's solid. Blake and Sephiroth. I have the reason Blake turns on us. I figured it out.
Okay.
So he just sold his PS5 because he doesn't play.
As he does. He had it for 2 weeks. Decided he was tired of it.
So I think what turns him evil is Spider-Man comes out to good reviews, and he wants to play it, but he knows we'll make fun of him if he buys a PS5. So he becomes evil so that he can take us out and play Spider-Man in peace.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, I think that's good.
And he's got, I know I'm referencing Lord of the Rings, but now I'm just imagining the Bilbo Baggins scene where he's got the ring and he's like talking about it in his hand, and his finger's like, why shouldn't I?
Yes, exactly.
It's like Blake holding a copy of Spider-Man 2 and like looking at us like, why shouldn't I? That's good. That's good.
So what's
All
your
right,
class?
so hold on, we gotta get Saul's class down.
Oh, okay.
Because I agree with Saul being the mid. Here's the
Paladin.
thing. One thing that people probably don't know about Saul, he's for as serious as he could be on the show, Saul's a really goofy person. And he farts all the goddamn time. Yu-Gi-Oh! Night, his chair is still beside me. The chair he podcasted in is the one that he does. Dude, I forgot to switch to chairs the other day. We went out to eat before we started doing Yu-Gi-Oh! Night, and I came back and I sat in his chair and a cloud of fart just, and I was like, bro, this should not be reasonable. How can I smell this? You've not sat in it for a week. So I have that going for it. So I like to imagine that Saul is somehow like putting out like poisonous magic or doing some kind of like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of how, I mean.
Paladin. He's a paladin.
I was thinking maybe like a black mage.
Wouldn't he be a white mage?
Or a red mage maybe.
I think paladin, but I'll go with your gut. Or technomancer.
I mean, that's not the worst setup. I guess I was thinking red mage because the red mage and like, well, I mean, you know, it's a Final Fantasy class. It's not in all the games, but it is in some of them. And it's like a kind of a mix of like a ranged DPS, like ranged magical, but also melee DPS. And the thing about Saul is I like to imagine his farts would be his ranged weapon of choice. Okay. That'd be like his area of effect spell, you know?
Gotcha. I like that.
Yeah, and then his more melee-focused DPS stuff would just be him coming up and saying you got juicy booty and trying to grab up on it. Okay. I'm painting such a weird picture of Saul, but within the friends group, it works. It makes sense.
I love that.
But yeah, I feel like people who listen who don't necessarily interact in the Discord, or at least didn't whenever Saul was doing the show with us and was far more active in the Discord than he is these days, I think that they have a different picture of Saul than people who listen to the show and then interacted in the Discord.
Yeah, because he's like, literally the ghost of Saul Bridges. He's a ghost.
Like, Kiki knows what I'm talking about when I say that Saul's like really goofy and dumb and like in all the best ways. I am too. I mean, it's who we are as people, but I just don't think that was as evident all the time through the show as he really is in person. And it's really an interesting dichotomy. And I think he acted a little more like himself in the Discord than in the show. And that's because we did the show differently back then. It's really kind of gone off the handle since you and I have started doing it. And I know it's inherently a different show, and that's fine. That's why we have the sexy corner. You know what I'm talking about? Let me hear this one more time. Velvet Corner. See? That's what I mean. Like that.
It's almost like there should be another beat so you can keep bobbing your head. God damn.
Well, now you can shake your head in disappointment at me. Okay. So I'm going to say gut feeling. Yeah. Saul's a red mage.
Okay.
And yeah, he's the tragic mid-game death. Okay. We got a, here's the thing. Do we want to give ourselves classes or do we want to have the other person give each other classes?
The other person.
Okay. Do you have anything for me already in mind?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
You're a bard.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, that's real fair.
Okay, cool. Glad we're on the same page.
Okay, so within that, what are my bardic duties as you see fit? Am I more like heal-based bard or am I more like buff-based bard? What am I doing?
I think you're a heal-based bard.
Heal. Okay, I got you.
But I think your biggest speciality is that you have high charisma. You're the host of the show, right? So I think you end up, you do the talking. You get us out of situations.
That's fair.
Cool.
I'm going to call you... Part of me wants to say assassin.
Okay. All right.
Or that kind of role.
A rogue.
But here's the thing. I don't think you're always stuck in the shadows. Or that you're always creeping around. So part of me wants to say like ranger, where you have that kind of ability to be a little more nimble and like poke up, but you only really speak up whenever you feel like there's something to say. Because like you're talking about, I'm the host of the show, right? So I think I'm thinking of party integrity too, though. If we've got a red mage and we've got an illusionist mage and we got me, we've got a lot of... Oh, you being a ranger, you could be a DPS. You wouldn't be a tank. So you and Saul would be like the DPS. I'd be like the healer / buffer. And then I guess as the illusionist mage, I don't know. Would Blake be the tank in the Holy Trinity? Would he be like the tank character? He's like makes illusions that people draw aggro to and can take a bunch of beating while the rest of us do our thing.
Exactly. But I think he's like creating familiars and stuff, so they're the tanks.
Yeah, it's all the Ghost of Xbox Pass.
Yeah, exactly.
All the characters that haven't had a relevant game in 20 years.
Right. He conjures up some Blinks the Time cats.
Dude, I know I'm pissing some people off by just saying bullshit that comes to my head. That's all. But it's so funny.
Yeah. It would be cool if he gets like Master Chief and like right before he's about to finish everything off, he just dies.
You know what's funny about that is I actually think Sony has a much bigger catalog of characters that have completely died in the social conscious.
Yeah.
And Xbox, most of the characters that people know them for have had a game in the last 5 years.
It's a very valid point. Yeah, so I don't know. I think I would have gone with Barbarian for me, so I'm good with Rogue.
I thought Barbarian, but I don't know that you're as... I don't know. I don't think you're as much of a brute as you're trying to think of yourself as. I genuinely thought about Barbarian. That was like the other... If I had to go with one, I wouldn't call you like... You're not Paladin, you're not Warrior. Like, if you're going to be more of a tank, Barbarian would fit the closest.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I don't view you in that light.
Okay. I'll take that.
So, all right. So let's see. I think that rounds everyone off, right?
Yeah, I think so.
That's our party.
I think we've topped everyone off.
Just like Kanye got topped off. All right.
Oh. Ooh.
We have an extension to the Velvet's Corner, and it's No Fate coming in, sliding into the Velvet Corner. You know, that section of the nightclub, section of the strip club, right, where you go and have a private room to communicate and talk. And he says, "Allow me to extend on this question by asking, which Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle characters are the four of us?" And he adds on, "We can't all be Raphael." It's bold of you to think that I want to be Raphael. Bold of you to think that Raph is clearly the best of the TMT. But you are
very clearly Raph, though.
Okay, and why is that?
Again, you're the host, you're the leader.
I mean, I thought Leonardo was the leader.
Okay, then you can be Leonardo. I don't follow the Ninja Turtles.
Bro, you don't know the Ninja Turtles? Hold on. Have you not seen Mutant Mayhem? It's awesome.
No.
Oh, wow. I feel bad for you. It's very good. You should check it out.
Never. I think the only thing I've watched
give me a second
Ninja Turtles is Batman and Ninja Turtles.
Did you ever seen the live action Ninja Turtle movies from the 90s?
Nope.
Dude, 1 and 2 are incredible. Turtles in Time, which is the third one, is a little rough, but it's endearing in some parts. Okay. It's like them going back to like samurai Japan. It's really weird.
Lit. I like it.
Yeah, it's a weird movie, but it's good. All right. Let me give you a quick rundown of how I view the characters. So Leonardo is typically like the leader, and he's very headstrong. I think that's a good example for him. Then you have Mikey, and I feel like Mikey's probably the one you know the most about. Would you say that? I don't
know anything about the Ninja Turtles.
You are kidding me. Mikey's the orange headband?
Okay, that works.
Oh, my God.
Does he have maces or something?
You are killing me, my guy. No, he doesn't have maces.
I call him
I call him I call him like the hippie of the group, right? He's like the fun-loving, free-spirited goofball. Like his character's purpose is comic relief.
So that's me.
Okay, so you're comic relief, and
you're Leonardo.
Okay, gotcha. I am very headstrong, so I actually don't think that that's the wrong. Here's the problem of this. Raph is like the big, muscular, serious dude.
Blake.
I don't know who to give that to. We're all a bunch of fucking idiots is the problem here.
I think we can give it to Blake. I mean, what is the characteristics of the other guy?
Oh, the
Gerald
brains.
Or whatever his name is.
Donatello. Do you at least know that they're named after the 4 Renaissance painters?
Yeah, but I don't know Renaissance painters, so it doesn't help me at all.
At least you know that much. Okay, Donatello is the last one.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, he's like he's the brains of the group. So like in more modern stuff, he's typically the more techie one of them.
Okay, you can give that to Blake. Yeah, no, he's got to be that one because somebody who buys, sells, and trades gaming PCs, Switches, and Xboxes and PS5s as much.
I got to throw this out there. Saul buys so many technology things that it blows my mind. You know how many emulator things that Saul's bought, like those little emulator handhelds? He's bought like almost every single one that's hit the market.
Damn. All right,
like almost every 3 months, he's got a new one. And I'm just like, was the last one that you said was really cool not cool enough? And then he's got the Steam Deck and a Switch and computer that he's constantly upgrading.
All right,
I feel like I want to give it to Saul.
Okay.
So I guess Raph ends up by nature of that, unless one of us wants to take Raph. It feels unfair of me to give myself a role, so I will defer to you. If you think I'm Leonardo or the leader, then I'll roll with that.
Yeah, I think you're Leonardo.
I am hard-headed, so I do think that's I'm very.
All right, I'll give Blake Da Vinci or whatever the other one is, and then
so Raphael, are we going back to being the masculine,
I'll take Van
muscular?
Gogh or Donatello or whatever it is.
I hate you, Chris. I know that you're doing this on purpose, but woo!
I am.
I know that someone is equally as like, how the hell can you grow up without Ninja Turtles as they were with me last week when I'm like, I didn't really do a lot of Power Rangers because I just didn't.
I didn't watch Power Rangers or Ninja Turtles, and I didn't see Star Wars until Force Awakens was coming out, and I've never watched Lord of the Rings.
So you grew up watching Saved by the Bell. There's something going on there. Apparently, my parents are far more hip. I guess that's what it is.
Yeah, maybe.
That's what happens when your parents have you when they're not ready.
Fair. Here's the thing. I watched Saved by the Bell because I knew
Saved by the Bell's a great show, though. I'm not even like hating.
But I knew because my dad would watch it with us in the morning. So I knew.
Oh, yeah, fair.
And I liked the show and I liked spending time with my dad. But I also knew that if we watched Saved by the Bell and the bus went by, we were going to finish that episode of Saved by the Bell before he got up and took us to school. So
that is so funny. I actually told my daughter the other day that used to in the morning we'd get it because I lived out in the middle of nowhere, so I had to ride the bus. And I told her that we had to get up at like 6 a.m. And I was like, I remember we'd get ready and we'd eat breakfast. This was before my parents were divorced. We had 1 year in the new house that we had built. It was a big upgrade from the trailer we lived in. And I remember that for that year, we had cable, which was not always the case. And we would watch the Addams Family cartoon and stuff like that in the morning before school with my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good times. Before the Fire Nation attacked. The Fire Nation being my dad's fist slamming against my mother's face.
Jesus Christ.
To this day, I hope he listens to this podcast. To this day, he says he's never hit my mom. And all three of us, well, my sister was literally a baby when my parents got divorced, but my dad beat my mom like the whole time I was growing up. So I just think, I know that's like a real heavy thing to unload on the show, but it goes to show you how much people have like a dissonance with themselves. Like they just think things didn't happen the way they did.
Yeah.
I'm sure it hits us all at some point, but when you have those moments, it's like, wow. Like, dude, it's been 20 years. You can't tell me that you definitely hit mom in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm still talking to you. If it was going to impact our relationship to that degree, You wouldn't even,
I wouldn't bother because I remember. So just be honest. Now you're just pissing me off because you're lying.
Exactly. And he looks at me so indignantly when I say it.
Well, so we'll add some levity. With my staff, I'm like, if I don't want you to work, like if you're late, just be honest. And I got so pissed the other day because one of my guys is almost an hour late, and he looks at me, and this is for audio listeners. I'm rubbing my eyes. He looks at me and he goes, "Oh, traffic." I was like, "Shut the fuck up, dude! You were still half asleep, and I drove through the traffic an hour ago." You woke up late. Now I'm mad and writing you up because you were late. I wouldn't have done that if you just said, "Oh, I woke up late. Sorry." I'm like, okay, I didn't fucking need you an hour ago. We're dead. We're just prepping. I didn't need you, but you lied to me. Now I'm pissed off. Now you're getting written up. Fuck you.
Yeah, it's pretty true. How? So you would be completely reasonable if somebody walked in an hour and a half late and they were like, "Dude, Armored Core 6."
Yeah.
I get it.
Dude, at my last job, I'll tell this story, but one of the guys I used to work with, me and him played MLB The Show together occasionally. And he came in one day and he was like, "Oh man, like I got so close to finishing this challenge." It was like the last day of the season. He was like, "I'm so close to finishing this challenge, but I had to come to work." And I just looked at him like, if you just called me and told me, I would have told you to finish. He was like, "Oh man." I was like, "Yeah, I don't care." That's the thing. Like, I would rather you be honest. If I call you to work and you're like, "Oh, I got to wash my dog and clean the carpets," I'd be like, "Okay, well, fuck you." But you're like, "I don't want to work." I'd be like, "Okay, cool."
Yeah,
it's your day off. Like, what am I going to get mad at you for?
Yeah, I know somebody who's like that, where they have to come up with a reason why they can't on their day off. I'm like, no, dude. Just tell the person, "No, it's my day off and I don't feel like getting overtime and I don't want it." So yeah, no.
I used to do that. I used to make up the biggest lies of all time. I would just be like, "No, I'm going to a fucking baseball game like 4 states away. I can't." Now I'm just like, no. There was one time before I became a manager, one of the assistant managers was like, "If you work late, if you work today on your day off, I'll give you another day off this week." And then so my chef was like, "I can't do that." And I'm like, "Well, he fucking told me and I don't want to work today, so I'm leaving." He's like, "Okay."
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I'd be like, I need that in writing and notarized, because there is no way in hell that I work today and then you still don't give me a day off.
Yeah, well, that's how I was like. He was like, "Don't you want overtime?" I was like, "No, I want to watch the Red Sox game. Like, I'm going home."
Yeah, I would just love. Part of me would love to have somebody just go through like a series of like way over the top. Like, "Hey man, we got somebody short today. Would you be willing to come in on your day off?" "Oh man, there was like a last minute military draft. I can't believe you didn't hear about this. They took all the first sons."
Yeah.
And dude, I'm right now. I'm in the turn on like on your computer. You like hit a button and you hear like helicopter things. Yeah, dude. Like I'm on. They're taking me over to Korea right now, bro.
I'm actually dropping into the Kremlin immediately, so I gotta go. Yeah.
Just turn on the intro to Tropic Thunder and just have it on in the background.
See, I'd be listening to that whole thing and be like, "All right, you're gonna be at work tomorrow?" "Yeah." "All right, cool."
I would be like, "Yeah, dude, they said it's just a single day operation. I can come back tomorrow."
It's actually the fastest war of all time. I can't believe it. Just like Iraq.
Yeah, they think it may not even hit the news cycle.
Yeah, I'm actually part of a covert ops team.
I've never told you this, but I'm actually a member of the FBI, and I only use this job when I'm in between missions.
I really like flipping burgers, so I'm going to keep working.
Yeah, the FBI is just my job, but the flipping burgers is my passion.
I always wanted to go to Hamburger University. Sadly, I went to Bureau before I went to HU.
Oh, dude, you missed out on HU.
Dude, I've always wanted to go to HU. I should have stayed with McDonald's.
Why not?
Yeah,
I think just saying that you have a degree from HU is also fucking hilarious. Part of me just wants to go so I can just start telling people like, "I'm a doctor, Dr. Beck."
You know what's sad? They should have
a PhD in burgerology.
They should have just called it MU. You know,
McDonald's,
because then because they work with cows, and you went to Moo University.
You absolute I saw it coming from a mile away. I was just waiting for you to say that dumb shit.
Oh my god.
Oh, all right, Chris. I think this has gone on quite long enough.
Yeah, let's end this dumb shit. I got work in 7 hours.
All right, so here we are. What is the community stake for everybody? What should they have called Hamburger University?
Yes, exactly. What's the slogan for Moo? Well, we went on for like an hour about a topic, and I can't remember what it was now. An hour and a half later.
Probably how COVID, impacted games and how the context of games are changing.
It was
the way that people are looking at them.
I was that one's not bad. I was thinking of the what's your favorite?
The Bible stories.
That one, yes. But your pinnacle of each genre or type of game.
Yeah, the pinnacle of each genre is actually a good question. I think that's a really easy one to put out and have people answer. So there you go, Jehudi. Your question has become, one genre and the game that you pit other games against in that same genre. We'll throw that out there on social media. So again, if you want to follow us on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, then you can find us at Triangle SQRD. You can find us on Facebook in the group Triangle Squared PlayStation Podcast. And then lastly, whether you're watching on video, hopefully, or listening on podcast services, click down in the description and join the Discord. We love to hear you. That's where you're going to find Chris and I 99% of the time. You'll see me on Twitter here and there. I have my moments. But until next week, I want to remind you guys that if you want to support the show with more than just your time, which we are always so thankful for, then you can head over to patreon.com/Nardtech and give us as little as $1 per month. It's a huge help to us. It keeps the show afloat without us having to stress about digging in our own pockets. And we are forever grateful for you guys that allow us to do this. So without further ado, we always shout out our patrons at the end of every episode while that list is still reasonable enough to do so. So without further ado, we would like to shout out Spencer, Brandon Edwards, Alex, Barry Rogers, Easton 328, Aztec King, Lechion 69, The Lord Corgi, Hammond Egger, Bailey Robertson, Mark Schutz, Cypher Primus, Kyle Grimm, Rude Days 93, Kevin Bacon Bits, Danny Villalobos, Jehudi MD, No Fate, Josh Ayers, Derek Porter, Donovan Williams, and Matthew Green. And finally, Sean Sanderu. Thanks to each and every one of you. See you next week.